There we go. Okay, we're supposed to be live on YouTube now too. Let's get set up. I've got what was I saying? I was saying something about what I've got going on. Just trying to finish setting up, and it's supposed to be live. Oh, here we go. Can I click on it? Oh boy. Um, oh wait, I was watching the YouTube channel on a different account so I could see it. So there's that. No, no, no. Uh oh. An MKO is starting. Oh no. Uh oh. Come on, I've got announcements to make because I got 2 new followers. You're here somewhere. Hold on. Okay, let's do the thing. I'm going to butcher this so hard. I'm so sorry. Amara Gaming, thank you for a follow. Most likely Marsh, thank you. Marsh, that's I know Marsh. I kind of know a Marsh. I might know a Marsh. Uh, where am I? What the hell? Maybe I didn't. I didn't follow myself. There we go. There we go. Okay. Sure. That's turned off. Now we go here. My channel. Okay. Okay, I think we're there. I think we're set up. Hmm. Okay, so I'm super excited. I've got all kinds of stuff going on this morning. I've got the 2 new followers. Guys, I'm at 28. What the heck? And that's so cool. I wasn't expecting to move that fast. Honestly. This is like I'm doing a slow roast here. um but yeah, so thank you guys. Anybody who watches this, if it gets turned into a VOD, anybody who pops in today, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Um, and as far as what I've got to play while we're here, um, we've got our favorite game, Planet Zoo, and then I might cry today. It's I found some Brian Barczyk videos, podcasts to listen to today. So there's that. Brian Barczyk is a huge figure in the reptile industry. Um, he started out breeding ball pythons. He did a whole lot of more stuff. Um, and his podcast, he did a vlog, and he vlogged like every day. It's pretty crazy, and he's so cool and so positive. He has like a real passion for reptiles, and to grow on that, he developed a zoo. So he has just this super cool reptile zoo, and he's got, oh god, he's got like 2 anacondas. He's got an alligator snapping turtle. He's got multiple retics. My personal favorite is, oh, I can't even remember her name. It's been so long. Um, anyways, the morph is called cow retics. They're these beautiful white snakes with black speckling, black and like brown. They're gorgeous, just gorgeous 20-foot long snake. Um, but yeah, and he developed it further by doing extensions onto his zoo. So he's got, I don't know, he's done a whole lot of stuff for helping people get over fears of reptiles and stuff like that. Unfortunately, last year he died of cancer. So there's that. Unfortunately, like really, it was really really sad. Um, I kind of fell out because I couldn't handle it emotionally. It sucked so much. It was a massive blow. Just about anybody that I watch on YouTube, as far as reptiles, they've, uh, yeah, uh, huge loss. But I'm super excited because I found the podcast that he does. This is Brian Barczyk's The Snake Talk Podcast, episode 42. It came out 3 years ago because I'm so up to date on everything. But yeah, so it's about an hour and 50 minutes. There's Brian Barczyk, and he's got some industry buddies chatting with him, and I'm really excited to hear this. So I will be keeping an eye on chat. If anybody pops in, please feel free to say something, and I would be more than happy to pause the podcast and interact with you. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for it. Let's go. Um, yeah. You can tell I'm excited. I really yap, lots of yapping. But it's been 6.5 minutes. So let's go to this one and double check all of our audio inputs. Okay, everything looks good. Yeah, everything looks good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and push play on this podcast, and I'll probably pop in and make some comments every now and then. But that's just me. So let's get on with it. Let's go.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Saturday Night Snake Talk.
That's Brian, by the way. That's Brian. Totally recognizable voice. Love the man. R.I.P.
We may talk snake tonight. We may not talk snakes tonight. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do. I got a little bit of things to talk to you about, but I also need you guys to, as always on Saturday nights when we are solo, to steer the ship with your super chats, ask questions, all the questions you guys want, and I will answer. So you can literally ask me anything. I'm happy to answer. With that being said, I think we have guests for the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we got some pretty cool people coming on too.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We've got
for sure.
We have the Real Mowgli's coming up early December.
That's awesome.
We've got, I think the first weekend in December, we've got Garden State Tortoise coming, which I'm super excited
gonna
about.
be great.
Cannot wait to talk to those guys. I visited them years ago. Amazing place, great. Their Instagram's been blowing up this last 6 months or so. Really cool thing. They've got this box turtle that has become like an internet phenom.
No way, really?
Sure, coming up. We've got Ryan and Kyle from Primitive Predators coming up.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
For real?
they're coming up in
Sick.
early December as well. And then a couple other people. And then we have, of course, we got Love Bug.
She's coming on too?
She's coming on.
Sick.
So we've got
good ones for you.
We've got some fun guests coming up over the next month or so, something like that. But I think this weekend, well, I don't think, I know.
Yeah, you're stuck with us,
I'm
schleps.
stuck here, me and Jay.
We're gonna have a good time.
This is all we got. But for those of you guys that didn't listen to Wednesday's checking in podcast, we did get the approval for the Reptarium expansion.
Congratulations.
Yes, it's a huge one. It's like I tell people, I've told people a million times, you could do all your due diligence, and we have. I mean, we've done so much planning and hiring an architect and engineering firm and going through the motions. And listen, we got a long way to go. But we could do everything. But if the city didn't approve us, it was all for naught, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
as
right.
a matter of fact, we ended up spending about $20,000 on an architect firm, and we knew that was kind of potentially throwaway money.
Yeah.
We knew that if for some reason something didn't go the way we wanted it to, that we were just throwing that money away. But we knew that we needed that to get to where we are today.
That's right.
And we hoped and we felt pretty confident that things were going to go okay with the city, but you never know. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. And even my architect, who was at the last meeting, was at both meetings. We had 2 public meetings, a planning meeting and then the city council meeting. And even he said, listen, I work with cities all over the Metro Detroit area. And he said, you go to the city council with something that makes sense, like this expansion, you know,
Yeah.
to be able to, you know, bring more people into the city, have an aquarium, have this, you know, this landmark that is going to really help drive a tremendous amount of business to local businesses because of tourism. And he said, but most city councils will somehow make you jump through hoops, even though it makes 1,000% sense to just go ahead and approve it.
Right.
And he said, so it's great to see a city like Utica that did approve it without us jumping through hoops and doing things that were ridiculous. So it was really cool that we did this. I will say it was interesting. I was really nervous at the meeting. So I got really, my
Shook up,
anxiety was, my anxiety was through the roof at the meeting because I knew how important it was. And thankfully things went well. But you'll see. I think it's going to be in a vlog because I filmed it. We just didn't put it in yet with my phone. I was literally shaking in the parking lot
Which
when
is
we
crazy,
left. I mean, like
man,
literally,
you know?
I couldn't hold the phone straight. My entire body was shivering just from like that emotional like
Drain.
roller coaster.
Yeah.
Little bit of backstory. Brian Barczyk suffered from like severe anxiety. He talked about it a number of times on his vlog, and just bringing awareness to mental health stuff. He brought it up a lot. He really cared about mental health too. So when he's talking about like shaking and everything, that's definitely his anxiety, and I can relate to that. I'm pretty sure a number of people, if they ever end up watching this, can relate to that. You know, you try to do something and like you've got all the calming techniques, but still like your hands are shaking and you can't like hold things steady. It gets real frustrating really fast.
Coaster ride. And it was kind of funny. I think we told the story on Wednesday that the meeting started at 6:30. Our agenda started at 7:45 for the public meeting part. So the first 15 minutes, there was actually another group there that was trying to start another dispensary here in Michigan. And or in Utica, there's already two, and it became a very heated thing.
I wish I could have been there to see that because that
man.
must have been so funny to like.
Yeah.
Because I know deep down in your head the whole time you're like, oh no, these people are gonna like, you know what I mean? Like, are they gonna transfer this energy to me?
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was really shaky. And so what happened was that like 15 minutes was this heated exchange between the city and the attorney that was representing the client that we wanted to open up another dispensary. And I guess I don't know a lot of back history, but apparently passing the ordinance to allow two dispensaries was a gigantic thing from what I take from all the conversation.
A lot of pushback.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of pushback. A lot of the council really didn't. It wasn't a unanimous decision, and ultimately they wrote this ordinance saying that they were going to allow two dispensaries, and they're now open and running for business right down the street from us. And but it was very clear that they weren't going to allow more than two, you know. And so this third person comes in, and it became a real like, you know, fight. Like, you know, how dare you even come in front of us? You know, you know that we're not going to allow anything else. This is an insult to the council. All kinds of stuff.
Just a waste of their time almost.
Yeah, and that's the guy said. He goes, "You're wasting our time coming here like this." And so, and I see a bunch of super chats, so we're going to get you guys
they're
here
crushing
in a minute.
already.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. So this, I mean, it helps today so much when we're solo to be able to answer your questions and steer the ship. So anyways, point is that it's 7:45. Public hearing started about the agenda, which was our building. Nobody showed up, so the public hearing was this. Okay, the public hearing is open. Is there any public here that wants to talk? Yeah, nothing. Crickets. Crickets. He goes, all right, motion to close public hearing. And then they closed the public hearing literally
So
30
cool,
seconds
man.
later,
Yeah.
which was great because now we just have the city council to deal with, not public people saying how much they don't want more us to build or whatever. Which is, by the way, very rare. Usually there's at least one a-hole in the city that's going to come out and complain about
my grandma was
something.
killed by a snake. And
Yeah, you know, I mean, whatever. And but then they went back to the weed people because they hadn't really finished the conversation yet. And so they go back to the weed people, and there's another 10 minutes of like, you know, kind of
debacle.
Yeah, like whatever. And so by this time it was 25 minutes into the meeting. I had just been sitting there kind of idly, you know, listening to this, being nervous. And by the time they started talking about my or our project, I was already like pretty anxious.
Yeah,
I was like
pretty wore out.
What's going to happen? But it went very, very well. So to a person, it was 100% unanimous, and it wasn't just like, hey, let's pass this. It was thanking us for being in the city, thanking us for investing in the city, and it's just really an amazing thing. And,
It really is, dude.
And of course, we did a video that was, I believe, yesterday that talked about all that, like do what you say. Do what people say you can't.
That's right.
And I really believe that, people, and a lot of people still think it's not a smart idea for me to invest in the building I'm in now, that I should buy another building and move and stuff like that. But again, I go back to the, what I said in this video. Not only would buying another building be more expensive because I would have to retrofit the building and all this other stuff, but on top of it, I don't want to move out of this city.
And there's not a lot of options.
There's not a lot of options. It's a small city. I mean, we're surrounded by major metropolitan areas. And so when you come to visit the Reptarium, within 10 minutes, you can get to everything you want, from food to entertainment to
hotels, lodging,
hotels,
whatever.
bars, whatever you want. But our city itself is only 2 miles by 2 miles square.
Yeah.
And then we're surrounded by giant cities. So the city is run on a very small town feel. And so that's why I want to stay here. So let's hit some of these supers before we get into the next thing, because you guys are crushing. Please keep crushing. I love talking to you guys, and I love answering any questions you have.
All right, let me get to this first one here. We got Brad says, "Love you guys. What you do and the positivity. Is Bill Strand the guy I should listen to when it comes to chameleons?"
I don't know who Bill Strand is, to be totally honest with you.
No, I have
first
no
off,
idea.
first off, thank you so much, Brad.
Yes, much love.
Second, I don't know who Bill Strand is, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that Camouflage Creations, which is a camouflage chameleons, out in LA. There's a lot of great chameleon people out there. I like camouflage, and it's K. Like camouflage or whatever.
Yeah.
I like them. That's where a lot of our chameleons have come from.
They're beautiful.
They're great
animals.
people. They're really great to work with. Super nice. Always willing to help. I'm sure there's a ton of other people that are fantastic with chameleons out there. I just don't have the wide knowledge of the chameleon world, to be honest with you. So I've kind of chose only a couple people to deal with when it comes to chameleons. So Bill might be a great guy. I have no idea. I'm so sorry. I don't really have a feedback on that one.
Eric says, "Hey guys, just sending some love. Love the vlog today and the purple ball."
Thank you so much. It was exciting. That clutch was really cool.
Was, yeah.
For those of you guys that didn't watch, we hit 3 out of 4 eggs were super cinnies, or they'd actually be black pastel cinnamon, so the super version of the two morphs.
Yes.
And one of them was a banana, which is kind of the purple ball python. And I think it's a building block. I think it's a building block. I think that, I think if we get into mahogany, GHI, blackhead,
Start getting those dark, rich purples,
chocolate potentially. I think we can really start. I think Enchi. We did miss the Enchi on it. That was a little.
That would
bit
be
of a
nice to
bummer.
get that vibrance up a little bit.
I think the Enchi would have made it even more purple and more vibrant.
Maybe even Orange Dream.
Maybe Orange Dream might be something that can increase. Hopefully, without making it more orange, maybe it just make it brighter.
I think it might make it more bright. I think it
might.
would. More like saturated. or something.
So it's the quest is on, and we're attacking the Barney Ball project from like 5 different angles.
That's right.
So we'll get there.
Little Bogus says, "Just bought one of your corn snakes. I'm on my way
that's
to being that crazy snake lady." Just
Beautiful.
kidding. His name is Herbie. Our football team is the Corn Huskers, and Herbie is our mascot.
Oh my gosh! Well,
Adorable.
go Corn Huskers!
Yeah.
And thank you for buying a corn snake from us. We really appreciate it.
Becky says, "Sending love as always."
Thank you, Becky. I appreciate you as well. Becky has been posting on Instagram and stuff like that. That
Yes.
she's on although she doesn't need it, I don't think she's trying to. She's on my fitness kick.
Oh,
as
she's
well.
on the No Pizza
So she's
November.
on the No Pizza November. I
Good
think
shit, dude.
so we're working. There's several people that have kind of contacted
that
me
cool?
and said
Yeah.
like, "I'm right here with you. We're gonna do this together." And,
Hell yeah.
and I think it's got. Actually, as of today, I'm down 10 pounds.
Congratulations,
So
Brian. You're looking great.
I'll be honest with you. I think I've got 17 pounds to go to where I'm going to feel happy. The weight. When I'm at 172 and I'm at 189 right now, I was at 199, so I was almost at 200 pounds. 189. So this is the first time I've been in the 180s for a while, so I'm happy about that.
Oh, yeah, dude.
But when I was at 172, I felt the most nimble. Like your body feels light, and you feel just more,
able to, more able.
Yeah, so that's my goal, is to get back down to 172. Dude. And the last time I was at 172, which was literally just not even a year ago, but most of that weight was really not from health; it was from anxiety. Yeah, I mean,
this will be a healthy weight loss.
Yeah, I'm eating very good right now. I mean, whereas when I lost weight before, I was eating decent, but it was also because I wasn't hungry because I was so anxious. So yeah.
Our boys Toad Ranch in the building. They dropped a hundo to say congratulations on the approval and super excited for the future of the Reptarium.
Thank you so much. As a matter of fact, we filmed a piece about you guys today.
That is true.
We filmed a piece, so in the next few days, you guys will see a piece about the Toad Ranch. We've now cleared out a couple rack spaces in the basement. I think we're going to have about when we're all said and done, we're going to have about 15, 16 feet of wall space. And so we'll be contacting you really relatively soon to start talking about ordering some cages from you, because we want to get those cages down there and start get some of these animals that are like our overflow, basically reptarium animals, right? So basically what it is that we right now, and I'm not a fan of this right now, when we do zoo to use, we take a lot of animals from the Reptarium. Yep. Not a lot. I mean, what I'm saying, we take about 12 to 15 animals to a zoo to you. Yeah. Usually 10 of those 12 are from the Reptarium. And it's two things I don't like about that. I don't like the extra stress that the animals are going through because they are now going to a zoo to you, then coming back and they have open to the public. Yeah. I don't really like that part of it. Two, you are taking a chance of taking stuff out and getting sick or whatever the case may be. More, again, goes back to stress, goes back to all kinds of different stuff. And then lastly, when we're doing a zoo to you, like we have one tomorrow, that, we'll be out with the animals from the zoo to you. At the same time, we have a private tour here at the Reptarium. So those 10 animals are now not available to show people here at the Reptarium. Yeah. And of course, those 10 animals are usually very docile, cool animals.
Show-stopping animals.
Because we're taking them to the zoo to you, So although we try to like leave Perdita behind, we leave the heaviest hitters behind, because when the zoo to use,
Perdita, that's the name of the cow retic that I love. Fucking adorable, and she's so pretty.
They're not as like going to the Reptarium to see Perdita. Yeah. They're more like they just want to see animals. So, but we always do take show-stopping animals as well to the zoo to use. So my point is that what we want to do is with the Toad Ranch cages is create habitats that are cool, not quite Reptarium, but still really really good.
A bit,
yeah, like cooler, not in rack systems, right? And we want to put our animals that will really be our educational animals, and probably take very little to nothing from the Reptarium.
That's the idea.
On the zoo to use, so that you almost have. And to be honest with you, I think that as we're slowly getting more schools and more zoo to use and more events that are going out, I really want to have like 3 different sets of animals. So like 3 albino Burmese pythons that are like sunrise. I want to have 3, bearded dragons. I want to have 3 skinks. I want to have 3 ball pythons. Whatever the case is, I want to have, group 1, 2, and 3, because I really do believe that in the next 6 to 8 months, year tops, we'll probably have 3 crews going out at the same time. Yeah. And we'll have 3 zoo to use at the exact same time. And right now, we're not really positioned to do that because we're using animals from the zoo. And I really would prefer the animals from the zoo never leave the zoo. Yeah. So thanks, Toad Ranch. I appreciate you guys. You guys inspire me all the time. I love following your stuff. If you guys haven't seen, please go check out Toad Ranch.
Yeah, they're dope.
They're great cages, great people.
Dave says, congrats on the final approval. Super excited for you guys. If you guys need any extra help when the expansion process starts with filming or anything, I'd be down to make the trip up.
I appreciate you, Dave. And I mean, we definitely will. I'm going to be taking every single person up on every single thing. As a matter of fact, some of the people that I'm excited about working with is, my friend Steve Bashy. He's been on the podcast before, but he's from Bashy Aquatics. He's got probably one of the biggest life support as far as fish goes. Yeah, you can pull bashies up. Amazing company. A very, very dear friend of mine that lives local, and I mean, like legitimately top notch. I wonder if there's like images. There's got to be
that's what I'm
some
looking for
images.
right
There's
now.
got to be some images. No, it just shows.
You
like-
know how he is,
Yeah.
dude.
he is bad on and it's actually BASH.
Okay.
And then C is in like C, like S. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
we
There you
got
go. There you
him.
go. So you can just see the quality of his manufacturing.
The way he
is-
thought of
is-
it, right, was like he wanted to make the stuff that you didn't want people to see,
Mm-hmm.
the stuff you wanted people to see. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff you would normally
Yeah, look
hide
at how
away.
beautiful that is right there.
Now this is like your engine of your car. You know?
Yeah, and so I mean, you can see his warehouse is right up here,
Yeah.
right there at that.
We've
spot.
been there a bunch.
And yeah, and I mean, it's as impressive of a place as I've ever seen when it comes to fish. So he's literally my guy. As a matter of fact, he was the first person I text when I left the meeting because we've been talking so much and he's going to be such a big part of it. And after, oh, look at this shark on his building is just absolutely ridiculous.
That's so good.
That's a giant. That's like a 25-foot shark.
No, this is a newer photo, right? Because the building wasn't black.
Well,
That was the
actually,
last time me and you went.
So it's black now, but this is actually not as recent because now the building is also
Slanted.
Crangular.
It's so
So this
crazy.
was before they put the angle on the building.
Wild.
So I mean, he's just top notch guy. But he, so I text him, and he messed around at first, saying like I just pissed myself. Oh, I'm so scared that now we got to actually do this thing. But in actuality, then he said, Brian, trust me, we're gonna make this incredible. And he said, please put your faith in me. And to be totally honest with you, I'm not gonna even lie to you. There's no way I could do this aquarium without a guy like Steve.
Dude, Steve's the man. He's gonna crush it for you, bro.
Right.
Like,
and not only is he gonna save me an ungodly amount of money, but on top of it, he has the knowledge that I don't have. Like I don't know filtration like he knows. I don't know all the millions of things. Just like when we open up the Reptarium, there's a million things that I've learned about running a reptile zoo that I didn't know. Jay Brewer from Prehistoric, told me that when I was getting going to open the Reptarium. He said, you don't even understand how much you don't know about what you're about to embark on.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm a pretty fast learner, so I don't think that there was any surprises that we couldn't overcome. But there's no doubt that 3 years into the Reptarium, we have a much better idea of how to do this the right way.
Yeah.
And we're correcting things that we did wrong in the beginning. We're changing things. We're like, again, the educational animals with the toad ranch cages are a perfect example. We're working towards a better, more smoothly run machine. I could never do that with an aquarium. So I'm using not only Steve's knowledge, but other people's knowledge. Like for instance, Ohio Fish Rescue. I talked to Rich yesterday from Ohio Fish Rescue. Great guys. Rich and Josh are amazing people.
Love that, man.
And I talked to him yesterday. They're not only willing to participate in any questions I have because they know so much, but they want to help supply as much of the fish as possible,
Which is incredible.
Which would save me. I mean, because now we're talking about instead of getting small fish that will eventually grow, we're getting big fish right off the rip that are going to be impressive. And basically, what happens with Ohio Fish Rescue is that a lot of people get arapaima and arowana and red tail catfish and the list goes on and on, and they get them, they're cute, and they got a 60-gallon tank. Well, all of a sudden these animals grow
Within like 2
bigger.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, these guys are outgrown, and so they call people like Rich up, and they're like, hey, I've got this this alligator gar that's 3 foot long, and it's in a 90-gallon tank, and it's too big. And so then they take them, and then so Big Rich has already said, like, listen, when you're ready, we're going to start gearing up, and we're going to get as much of these fish for you. Of course, not all of them, because there's tons of stuff that he won't get or that I want that he doesn't have. But certainly that's going to help a tremendous amount. And it's not just getting the fish; it's also his knowledge, his and Josh's knowledge, and being able to rely on them when I have questions. As a matter of fact, I my friend Greg from Aquascape was in town yesterday.
That's right.
And, of course, he's the largest pond company in the world as far as supplies. That's where, like, our biofalls.
I'm pretty sure he's talking about the pond guy. Dude does fantastic. Okay, the pond guy did Shaq's koi pond. Okay, just to tell you like how cool these guys are. Shaq, the super tall guy, the giant. Yeah, his koi pond was made by the pond guy.
come
I was
from
gonna say, yeah, all of our
Aqua-
biofalls
all
are
our
from them, right?
biofalls come, but he has, I mean, he had his, we got it, by the way, Jay's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
to come out to Aqualand
Oh,
sometime.
100%.
It is legitimately one of the most mind-bending places I've ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a 600,000-gallon pond in the front with a grotto and a waterfall.
Is that the one that you dove off
yeah,
or
it's
jumped
one
off
that-
of?
Yeah, the one I jumped off of. The building itself is ridiculous. I mean, the offices are ridiculous. The warehouse is enormous. He's got an indoor soccer
way.
thing
Field?
for
Like-
field for his employees. He's got a volleyball court for his employees. He's got a full-on gym with hot tub and cold tub in it.
Yeah,
He's got rooms to sleep in. I mean, this is all in his building.
Wow.
He's got a cafeteria that can seat like 100 people.
Wow, no way.
I
That's
mean,
so
it's
crazy.
I mean, this guy is first class when it comes to business. And did I tell you about this, Jay?
Which thing?
What he said about the front? of the
Yes,
building?
yes. But
Yeah,
you got to let the people know,
Yeah,
dude.
so there, obviously we're bumping that front wall of the Reptarium out, an additional 20 feet, right, from
Yeah.
where it's at now. So that's where we're going to gain a couple thousand extra square feet, not to mention the few thousand square feet that we'll gain from BHB. So we'll gain about five to 6,000 square feet with both of the build out. But there'll still be about a 7 or 8 foot gap between the building front and the sidewalk.
Okay.
And we were going to plant that out and make it like, landscaping nice. So Greg was here and he was like, man, he goes, let me take care of that for you. He said, I want to build you like some waterfalls. Well, big
gonna
like
be legit.
river, koi down there. He said, even like we'll put like some fire stuff where like, like it runs on natural gas where there's flames coming out the front of the building. And and he said, he goes, let me design it. We'll make this thing incredible. So I'm super grateful for my friends. Obviously, Paul Cafaro is willing to help out anyway. Joey from King of DIY is always on the call with me. So a lot of really great people will be working with, and I'm very, very lucky that to make this success. Not to mention Stuart, obviously from Universal Rock.
Of course.
He'll be a major player in it, and I've talked with him. He's already on board 100%. So this is the true sense of it takes a village.
Well, yeah, it's funny because it's almost like, like in the Vatican, right? The Vatican, there was all these professional, masons and artists from all over the world that came together to make this one project happen, right?
Yeah.
And this is like an animal Vatican almost, where this is all these different people from different fields coming together to make this dream happen,
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm just really lucky that I have friends and relationships with people. Oh, as a matter of fact, Greg from Aquascape yesterday hooked me up, and I was texting yesterday, and we're going to have a conversation either Tuesday or Wednesday is Brett from Tanked.
Dude, no way.
Yeah,
That's
Brett
crazy.
from Tanked. So I was texting with Brett from Tanked yesterday.
that's sick.
And he's like, yeah, I'm excited to help out any way I can, So we'll get Brett on the phone. I have no idea if they'll be able to be helpful or not. I don't know, but
I'm sure there'll be a question one day he'll help with for sure.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is. And Steve used to build the life support for Tanked.
Yeah.
So there's already a connection there too. So I know Steve knows the guys from Tanked as well. But Greg actually put me in touch with them yesterday, and we're texting back and forth. So seems like a real nice guy. Can't wait to jump on the phone with him, and lots of good stuff coming.
Brad says, what is the best way to get involved or even owning monitors? Find a mentor and research thoroughly, then buy one. What do you think?
It's a tough one. I mean, whenever you can find a mentor, that's the best way.
Yeah,
I mean,
obviously.
But that's not the easiest thing to do because not everyone's going to be in an area where there's a monitor mentor, right? I think that, research is super, super key.
That's for
and
sure.
understanding what monitor works for your facility / business / bedroom / living room, whatever you're going to be doing with it, right? You can have something as like a Gillanai or an Acanthurus that stay very, very small, King Ornum, that stay, dwarf monitors that stay really small. Or you can have something giant like a croc monitor or a water monitor that get giant, but then you're going to have a lot of space, time, and energy. So I think that research, listen, if you get a good captive bred animal from a good source, i.e. Kevin McCurley or Toothless Reptiles or whatever, someone that's actually captive breeding them, not buying a wild caught, it's not rocket science. I mean, these animals do very well. They're very hardy. As long as you're giving them the right environment,
That's right.
So then it's just a matter of what can you do? You know, like what can you keep a 6-foot monitor that's healthy for it and you, or do you need something small like a dwarf monitor? So if you can get a mentor, great. If you can't get a mentor, I think research and deciding and learning what the best animal is for you and then buying it from the best source is going to give you the best opportunity for success.
Yeah, and good luck with it. Whatever you get.
The monitors are great, man. I mean,
our favorites,
they're
sure.
crazy. They're amazing.
Mitchell says, just throwing some love. Been watching you for years. Everything you do is awesome. Chewy stories are their favorite, and they got to got him back on the podcast soon.
Ironically enough, I was talking to Chewy yesterday.
Oh, how is he? How's he doing? Okay.
He got this booster shot. So
this guy.
So I he had texted me like a week or two ago and said, "Hey, I'm getting my booster shot. Are you going to get one?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced." As a matter of fact, he was the one that hooked me up with my initial vaccine before it was like readily available to everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
And just a couple weeks early, and I got it. And so the same place that we got it actually did send me a letter saying, which, you know, by the CDC standards, I don't, you know, I'm not, you know, in a position to do it. But they sent me a thing saying, hey, if you want your booster, just make an appointment and come and get it.
That's great.
So Chewy said he was getting his. And so I texted him like 2 days ago and I said, hey, did you ever get your booster? He was like, yeah, I got it today, or I got it yesterday at 4 o'clock. And he goes, I feel like crap today.
No way.
He goes, that being said, I did go out and have a 6-pack of beer and some shots. And he goes, so I don't know if I'm feeling bad because I'm hungover or if that's the thing. And then and so we were texting back and forth with a bunch of things. And then he did text me this morning and saying, yeah, I feel great today. You know, it was just one day I felt like I kind of had the flu and a little bit of fever and a little bit of sore and chills and stuff like that. He said nothing too bad. So he's all set. And we did talk about him coming back down. We'll when he comes down, we'll do some filming and we'll have him on the podcast again.
We got to do a bunch with him.
He's just a fun guy. He's a good guy. And I miss him. I wish he didn't live so far away. And not only does he live far away, but he also works a lot at his job. I mean, he works like 6 days a week. So he doesn't, you know, the one day in Chewy, if anyone knows Chewy, the one day a week that he's not working, he's drinking, you know? So, you know, he's not coming down here. And basically what he does, his daughter lives in the area. So when he comes to hang with us and stuff like that, he just stays the night at his daughter's and then drives back home because it's about an hour and 40-minute drive or so to his place. So, but yeah, we love
Hopefully
Chewy.
soon.
Yeah, we'll get him back on.
Gecko Geek says, hey, it's my first super chat. Me and my daughter watch all of your vlogs, and her birthday's on the 19th. So I was wondering if you might be able to give her a birthday shout out. They didn't give us a name, but
so
if you put
Gecko
one...
Geek, your daughter, I give your daughter a shout out right now. Happy birthday on the 19th. That's coming up pretty quick here. What's it, the 12th or 13th?
It's
the 13th, I think,
13th
right?
today,
yeah,
baby.
13th today. So happy birthday to your daughter here in 6 days.
Yeah, I hope you guys have a great day.
Yeah, I hope you have a good time. And thank you for the first super chat. We really appreciate you so much.
Give me 1 second. Just got to
no
get
problem.
back up to the top.
Yeah, no worries.
Little Bogus says, what's your biggest wish for the aquarium? And I'm guessing something that maybe might not even be possible or somewhere in that range. You know,
it's really tough. You know, it's going back to the approval on Wednesday. That was the first day that this really felt real, right? So prior to this, I had manifested the fact that I thought it would be real.
Yeah.
And I worked and I saw the drawings and I saw, you know, we've sketched things on paper and we've thought about, you know, things. I've had many meetings with Steve Bashy and other people about this. But it was still a pipe dream, you know. I wasn't sure if it was going to happen. So since Wednesday, it's constantly on my mind.
Yep.
I mean, like, because now let me give you a timeline breakdown. So now my architects have to do the structural engineering, right? And then we have to get the construction blueprints.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, as a matter of fact, weirdly enough, interesting story, my stepdad that raised me since I was, you know, like 8 years old. Great man, by the way. My real dad, not so much. His grandson, my stepdad passed away 10 years or so ago. His grandson, I had not seen probably since he was like 13, right? Yeah. His name's Ryan. And about just before COVID, I think it was.
It was the grand opening weekend, wasn't it?
It was the year anniversary of the.
It was the year anniversary.
Year
You're right, you're
anniversary
right.
of the Reptarium, not 2.0.
Yeah, I remember it was a
but
party, big
Yep,
party.
it was a year anniversary of the Reptarium. He just shows up with his family and kids.
Yeah.
Now he's a full-grown adult. He owns a construction company, and we reconnected. We kind of reconnected as a family, which was awesome because he's super cool.
Came out to help build
Yeah,
the.
and then 2.0, he
2.0.
was unbelievably helpful.
Yeah.
We had everyone that came out to help with 2.0 was amazing, but we had a couple groups of people, Ryan and a couple other carpenters from Ohio, that were rock stars.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it.
Yeah, there was another guy here from Michigan that also was a rock star too. Everyone was great. I mean, there was no one that wasn't great. Even our Grand Rapids crew brought chili and stuff. I don't eat chili, but everyone else loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a really great experience. That being said, we've stayed in touch. Well, Ryan came today.
I know.
He came to hang out today, and he has now he does construction, but he doesn't do like buildings like this, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's doing houses,
residential, right?
and residential stuff. But he has connections that do stuff like that. As a matter of fact, he said his best friend. He told me, and I think this is totally accurate, is that the steel is going to be the hardest part. The actual fabrication, because of course we have to have massive steel to hold all the weight and stuff like that. And it just so happens that like his best friend from a teenager owns a gigantic steel fab company,
he does, dude.
And he does buildings like this.
Wow.
So obviously there's that, and there's a bunch. I have probably 5 or 6 different contractors that could take on this job. So what happens is that now they go into the blueprint mode for construction and engineering. Once those are done, which will probably take till probably mid-January, to be honest with you. It's going to take a few months, especially with the holidays. They said it'll be a little bit slower because there's time off and stuff like that. So we're probably looking at mid-January before we actually even get the blueprints. Then we have to shop those blueprints to X amount of people. I'll shop them to everybody, right? I want to talk to everyone I can, and we'll get the best price and or the people we feel the most confident that are going to do the best job, right? It's not always about price. I always say I would rather pay a little more to have great work than pay a little less to have shit work, right? But so we're talking that. So. Again, we're going to have all these blueprints. We're not just going to get an answer back in a week. It's going to take probably a month for people to bid us the jobs, and then we're going to probably have meetings with them. So figure if it's mid-January, we're probably not going to even get quotes back till mid-February, maybe even March, before we're in a position where we see, all right, we've got 5 quotes. Now let's meet with these people and stuff like that. So let's say we're in April by now, really, to be totally honest with you. Then we have to actually apply for permits from the city. That's going to take at least a month to 2 months to get the permits back from the city. So now we're in June, to be honest, right? June. Right. Once we get the permits back, we probably already have picked the contractor and we've already talked about it, but they're not going to schedule the job until they know everything's a go. So let's say they schedule a job in June. It's going to take them probably 2 to 3 months to get it into the docket. So realistically, what I'm shooting for is September 1st of 2022.
Right.
So that's 10 months from now. I mean, that's 10 months from now. And then, talking with Ryan and all these other people, you're looking at probably a solid 6 months of building the building itself, 6 to 8 months, depending on how quickly and if there's any issues come up and stuff like that. That's just building the shell. Now, when they're building the shell, especially towards the end of that shell, I will start building enclosures for the Reptarium. Right. So that way, when the shell is done, and the only part that we hope we only have to shut down for a very short period of time is when the wall comes out now. Right. That now is the exterior wall that is going to get pushed out. We're going to tear that wall out. Obviously, at that point, we're not going to be open to the public, right? Yeah. And so once that wall comes down and we have everything smoothed over and it looks like one bigger building now, as well as the wall comes down from BHB, right? That wall's down too. So now we have the additional 5,500 square foot. It's there. I hope we can then open back up, even though we will be under construction
That'd be kind of cool to see. You know?
Yeah, it'd be kind of every week you come in, you're going to see new enclosures in. You're going to see the next thing, going in like that. And that'll probably take us. I mean, by that point, we'll have built all the enclosures, RJ's enclosure, Salt and Pepper's enclosure. We'll have built them all in Texas. So now it's just shipping up and installing them. And you guys, I think if you followed 1.0, 2.0, once something arrives, it's literally a matter of weeks before it's done.
Yep.
I mean, we plug it in and play. This is a little bit bigger than the expansions from before, so this may take a little longer to get ready. But I think that within a month of it getting here, and we can still be open that month. Just with the Reptarium as is, and people seeing the construction of the new Reptarium. But I think within a month, we'll literally have animals in their enclosures.
Which would be so nice. We have so many bangers on the way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And so while that process is happening downstairs in the Reptarium, we will be in the process of working on the upstairs. The upstairs is, I think, going to take at least 6 months beyond that.
Yeah.
So realistically, if we're let's say everything goes well, we're looking at probably early 2023 for the Reptarium, mid 2023, summer of 2023 for the aquarium.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the dig site that hopefully will happen kind of simultaneously too. And hopefully the dig site will be open at the same time as the aquarium. So my goal is that 2023, I would love for the summer of 2023 have all 3 floors completely
up and running.
Completely up and running.
That'd be so nuts, dude.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Brad says, he was talking about your city meeting. Says, damn weed people, hoping to visit in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I know. I had said that, I was super anxious during the meeting, right? But in my mind, it was going through my mind when the city council, they asked me a couple questions. So I had to stand up to the podium and answer their questions. And in my head, I was way too anxious, right? Way too anxious at the time. But my head was, I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if I said so what you're telling me is I can't do weed at the Reptarium, right?
Yeah.
So is that what you're telling me?
Little icebreaker.
But I just was so nervous. I just wanted to get the answers out and just get keep it engaged and good, and it went very well. But yeah, no, I would definitely say that we're not going to see another dispensary here. That being said, the 2 that are going are popping like
crushing,
mad,
and I'm sure they're making crazy taxes for the fucking city.
Well, it was interesting. Interestingly enough, this is one of the things I found out at the city meeting is what the city was approximately making. So the city, so what happens is that the state pays the city. So all the city gets is like $2,000 a year.
The state gets all the taxes.
Right. And then the state divvies up a percentage of those taxes to how many dispensaries are in your city. So if there's let's say there's 800 dispensaries in Michigan, you get 2 of those 800, the percentage.
2%.
So they're probably only making $40,000-$50,000 a year on the dispensaries.
Really?
So they're not making that. The state is making giant money from the dispensaries, but the city itself might only be making $40,000.
And then
a year.
obviously, the people think about if I came, from Sterling Heights that doesn't have one, and I drive here, and then I go to Bill and Sally's or something like that.
I think that's kind of the hope. I don't know if it works, but I thought it was a much more. And the reason I know that is this attorney gave this presentation how adding a third one could add an extra $20,000 a year to the revenue
for the
and
city.
when you
think
about that, $20,000 for revenue is not very much.
Not
city,
at all.
So
the better play is to be the restaurants would be doing better because everyone's got munchies.
Right,
that's the real play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Becky says, "I'm down 7 pounds. Let's kick ass."
All right, you're 7. You got it. From a percentage standpoint, your 7 pounds is probably better than my 10 pounds because my 10 pounds is roughly 5% of my body, right? About 5% down. You're probably body weight a lot. You're probably 10% down or 12% down. So,
jeez, don't worry about it. You're both crushing it.
Yeah, and listen, I told this to Noah today. I told him, I said, no, I'm down 10 pounds, and I said, it's the first time I've been in the 80s since I got fat again. And he said, I said, but I want to get down to 172. So I got 17 more pounds. And he said, Dad, you got 50 years to get down to 70. He said, take your time. And he is really right. I mean, it's not about you don't want to lose weight too fast.
No, because it's not healthy, and you'll
because
put
it's
it
not
on
healthy,
twice as
and
quick.
you'll put it on right. It's really about the way I'm eating. It's not like I'm starving myself. As a matter of fact, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm eating more now than I used to eat.
That would make sense.
I'm just
yeah.
eating the right food right now. So I almost never ate breakfast. I still only do a protein shake, but I never really ate lunch. Now I'm almost always eating lunch. And then I'm usually eating 2 to 3 actual meals a day and a protein shake,
Which is good.
Which is prior to this, I was eating 1 meal a day almost all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm eating a lot more food and I'm losing weight.
Yeah,
So-
because your body is in starvation mode when you're only eating once a
Right.
day. It's like, hey, hold on to this fat because we don't know when we're getting more fat. You know what I mean? So
but keep it up, Becky, and we'll do
crushing.
it. All of us should be no nut November, no pizza November.
That's it. Josh at Pale Scale says, I support a lot of things you do, but I can't stand by you on this one. I'm currently on day 4 of back-to-back pizza for dinner.
Shit, Josh, man.
Josh, dude.
Josh, brother, man.
I'm also with you. I
know,
had it last night, so it's all good.
It's I'm disappointed in you, Josh, but I
understand.
I understand your plight, dude. I understand your plight. Trust me, tonight we have a VIP in the house, which is great. Which I love when we have VIPs, which has been most weekends now. Of course, the VIP experience here at the Reptarium consists of, you come in at 4. You get to hang out with me a little bit before the podcast. We do a little chit chatting, stuff like that, talk about stuff. There's the VIP area, obviously, with couches and game and the turtles, and then we get pizza for you, and you can have pizza and drinks and and it's tough, man. So the last 3 weeks we've had pizza in the Reptarium.
Really been testing your willpower.
And I have not had one bite of a pizza, so it's been tough. But what's the interesting thing is I found that and I've been into fitness. And I don't mean fitness in my mouth.
I know.
I've been
waiting for it.
Into fitness on and off for the last 5 years, and I've been in very good shape in those 5 years, and I've been in very bad shape in those 5 years. I feel like I just came off one of my worst stints, to be totally honest with you, and I think that would happen. And I don't want to digress too much out of the topics and stuff like that in your super chats, but I think what happened was for 14 months or so I was in anxiety hell, and when I started to feel better, the pleasure of eating,
just comfort,
made me feel like it was okay, and so I divulged in things that I wouldn't normally do. Lots of pizza, lots of fatty foods, not paying attention at all to calories or anything like that. So I know the recipe to get into fitness and to health. And that's all I'm doing. And I can tell you this much: when you start eating good, after a few weeks, you forget about pizza doesn't sound that good anymore. It's like, hey, I'm sure if I ate pizza right now, it would be like a orgasm in my mouth. You know what I mean?
But just thinking about it.
But I don't need it now. I'm not craving it anymore. I'm not craving that pizza. And so they say that your taste buds change after 30 days. I'm not at 30 days yet, but they say your taste buds change after 30 days. And I remember one time I got super lean. As a matter of fact, looking back on pictures, I was way too lean. I told you 172 is my weight that I'm super happy with. I was 157 at that time.
Right.
So I was definitely, 15 pounds too light. I almost looked sickly, to be totally honest with you. As a matter of fact, it was funny. My trainer at the time was not here in Michigan. She was in Vancouver, and she would just send me like what I should be eating and what my workout plan should be, and then I would just go to the gym and do it myself. And then she saw me in person at a reptile show in Canada, and she even told me, she said, I don't like the way you look at all. You look way too thin. You don't look good. You look kind of sickly. And she's like, you need to start eating more fat. You need to start doing this. And we changed things up and stuff like that. But my point is that I remember back then, I went 9 months where I didn't cheat at all. I didn't eat sugar. I didn't eat carbs hardly at all. I only the carbs that were decent for you. I was super lean on everything I did. And I remember eating roasted vegetables tasted like candy to me.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
I would
crazy.
eat roasted vegetables and be like, oh my God, it was just as good as eating a Snickers bar,
Yeah.
So 30 days is where you shoot for, and that changes your thing. And then
Almost
you
changes
just
your
gotta,
gut biome too.
Yeah, and you just got to stay the course, man,
Blue Bliv Beats or Bliv Beats, one of the others said, for both Brian and Jay, are you guys invested in the metaverse, and any thoughts on the next chapter of the internet?
Yeah, it's
a whole nother podcast right there.
Yeah, so those of you guys that don't know about Web 3.0 or the metaverse, obviously Facebook changed its name to Meta, but the metaverse has been kind of in the process now for the last few years.
Yeah,
you know? And we're going to see probably one of the most significant changes in behavior that we've ever seen as humanity.
Yeah, it will be a true renaissance.
Over the next 5 to 7, 10 years, let's say. But in the next 5 years, you're going to, I say 3 years, you're going to start to see it.
Yeah.
5 years, you're going to really see it. And 10 years from now, it's going to be
second nature. It'll be like what the internet is, right?
But you know, the down... I listen. I'm big on this. I love the metaverse. I'm into it. I'm starting to invest in the metaverse in different ways. I think that it's the people that invested in Amazon when it was a startup company. This is the opportunity for the next thing. Now, unfortunately, the downside is a lot of the companies that are going to be running the metaverse are already the Amazons and Facebooks of the world. But I do think that they now will see an immense growth again.
Yeah.
Will they be a $8 stock going to a $3,000 stock? No, it's not going to be that. But it is going to be a $3,000 stock that goes to a $9,000 stock. And I think that's going to be pretty amazing. Lori is literally crawling.
I was wondering what's happening. I'm like, I didn't see her, and I just see you looking around, and I'm like, is there like what's going on?
Yeah, like literally, Lori, like on her hands and knees, crawled into the podcast room and is now crawling out of the podcast
Lori.
room. Interesting. But so basically, in a nutshell, what the metaverse is going to be is an augmented reality.
Possibly totally random shout out. Lori and Noah, I hope they're doing okay. I know it's been a minute already, but yeah, shout out to them.
Now there's going to be some amazingly great things about that, and there's going to be some things that I'm very afraid about that. So obviously, if you've seen Ready Player One, that's basically what we're looking at. In the early stages, I think that's what we're looking at. In the later stages, I think it's going to be even more real than Ready Player One.
You won't know,
right? But if you remember in Ready Player One, these were people that, like, she was like this really cool, like, badass that she created her augmented reality, And in real life, she was kind of a shy, like, kind of, introverted. And that's what's going to happen in the metaverse. Doesn't matter who you are as a person, it's who you create as a person in the metaverse. So you may be the most shy, introverted person in the world, but in the metaverse, you want to create this. You decide, I'm going to create this, like, outgoing, exuberant,
nihilist, almost,
I'm going to go out, and that's who I'm going to be in the metaverse. Now you're going to be hanging out with your friends that are doing the same exact thing, right? So you're really not going to be hanging out with anyone's really. You're going to be hanging out with everyone's alter ego,
their social personality,
and there will be. I saw Logan Paul, who is obviously is versed on crypto / NFT / metaverse as anyone out there. Him and Gary Vee, I think, are some of the leaders when it comes to the marketing side. Certainly not the engineering side, but he said that there will be a time where it'll be painful to take your glasses off.
Yep.
When you got your VR glasses, you will literally be pained to take them off because you don't want to leave that augmented world. And that is scary to me, to be honest with you. I'm excited about it. I will be a part of it. I want to be on the cutting edge of it. I've already bought a bunch of domains about the metaverse. I want to absolutely work with Facebook. In the future, we have a great relationship with Facebook. I think when we get there, I want to be the first virtual reality reptile zoo. Yep. I want to totally... think, and that's where NFTs come in as well. Like, just right now, like you can buy, different things in Call of Duty.
Like different like skins for your gun or something like that.
Gun, stuff. That's what an NFT is,
Yep.
right? It's the exact same
Your
thing.
your actual car you'll be driving around will have a different like
Yep.
virtual color grade on it or
Yeah.
color profile on it.
And you can have
Yeah.
the only one of that type.
Yep. And it was
that's gonna
designed
be
by Louis Vuitton or
right.
something.
So
you know?
everything you build in your metaverse is going to be an NFT.
Yep.
You know, and so we're trying to be on the front end of that whole movement. So super excited about it. I'm investing in companies that I think will be the leaders. You know, NVIDIA, obviously Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft,
Unreal.
AMD. You know, I mean the list goes on and on. So yeah, it's an exciting thing.
Whole
but
new
also
world.
It is a whole new world.
Yep.
And
Now, all right. So the one thing with like the pains you to take it off, right?
yeah.
So I wonder if that's kind of all right. So right now we interact with our phones similarly, right? We look at screens for a majority of our life.
Yeah.
All of us.
Hours a day. Yeah.
But for instance, me, like when I have a day that I'm not doing anything, I don't hang out on my phone. I go out in the woods. I hate being on my phone if I'm off.
I think that you got to remember though that you're a generation, the first generation of the internet.
Yeah.
But you're not. It's not in your.
You're not wrong. I didn't grow up with
Yeah,
it.
you
I
didn't grow
was
up. When you're 12.
And all you've known was an iPad.
You know, I
or
mean, it's like
virtual world.
like even the difference between you and Noah was pretty significant.
It's huge. Yeah, it's a huge difference.
You know, when Noah first got out of school, he was socially really awkward because he had almost had all of his interactions
yeah.
outside of school was playing Call of Duty on a headphone with his friends.
Yeah.
His friends didn't get together and hang out. They played Call of Duty together every day. And so all of a sudden when he gets away from school and it's a different environment, and now you're in a social setting, you know, he was very, very awkward. And it took him a couple years to come out of that shell. I remember when he was like 19 years old, I was like, man, what's wrong with this kid? Like why when like he's around people, he just acts like he doesn't even know what to do.
Yeah,
like
socially inept almost.
Yeah. And now of course he's grown out of that and he's become a normal human being. But
no, I understand what you're saying though.
But and that's only a few years difference between you and Noah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the 12-year-old that all they know is this augmented reality?
That's a great point. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
And I think it will be, and especially, you know, we know that, you know, not everyone's the most popular in school.
Right.
Could you imagine that, you know, because there probably will be a day in the next 10, 12, 15 years where you don't go to school.
Oh, I
You
think
go to
that's
school.
one of the first things that'll happen.
Yeah, you're going to go to
Yeah.
school with an augmented reality. So you're never going to really meet your classmates ever in
yeah.
person. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You're only going to meet your classmates in this augmented reality.
So
And that's going to be, you know, that's going to change social behaviors. And as a matter of fact, I know the one thing people talked about is that this might be the extinction of human beings.
I can see that.
And what they've said is that you will not go and meet another person to propagate.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, that's why some people are predicting the fall of the U.S. as opposed to, you know, China is outlawing the metaverse.
No way, really.
You are not allowed to do anything with the metaverse in
Yeah, because
China.
we'll all be so stuck in it, and they'll be like taking over our country.
Yeah, they're gonna keep growing. They're gonna be doing stuff, and we're gonna not be. Our population growth will go negative because we won't be producing babies because we're not meeting people. So
And
on
you've
and
seen
so
that during
forth.
COVID, right?
Yeah.
Where people spent most of their life in Zoom calls and virtual worlds, and in some way, and they stayed home and didn't procreate, and now we have negative population.
Yeah, so it's
Interesting.
you know, that's the one thing, you know, but I think those are all things that we're going to have to deal with as it goes, and we're going to have to see what happens. But technology is going to happen
It's
whether we
exciting,
want
though,
to or
man.
not, and it is exciting. I
Yeah.
think that again, I think that there's 18 notifications. What
Oh,
the
you
heck
getting
is
blown
that?
up, baby?
What's going on here?
You got a viral video with
What's happening over here on the gram, man? Something's going on my gram over here. Okay.
You want me to read a couple soupies?
Yeah, go ahead. Then.
Nick says you should do an employee ice rink for hockey, Brian. Kind of like
Right,
the employee soccer field, you know, at Aquascape.
So yeah, I mean, you know, I don't disagree with that. I don't know where we put it, but yeah, I mean, I'm all about that. You know, I think
Be nuts.
you know, I think that, you know, at some point in the world, I don't know when, we're gonna not be as hectically busy as we are right now. I think, I hope, I don't know. I've been saying that for many years, but I do. Lori and I talk about it all the time that we need to carve out time for team building. We have a great crew. We have a tremendous amount of people that believe in us and work with us that you know, see our vision and want to be a part of the vision of the future. And I would like to create some more time. We talked about doing an axe throwing thing.
Yeah.
One thing we always do well, last year we didn't because of COVID. but we always do something fun for Christmas. Whether it's painting with the twist, or
you guys did curling one year,
yeah,
right?
we did curling with the you throw the stones down the ice. We did that a couple times. We've done a lot of different things, and I think this year we'll be back to that. And we've talked about maybe doing like an axe throwing party.
That'd be sick. Let's do that.
For things. So I think a lot more team building. I think it's important to take days. I think not even necessarily for the holiday. I think sometimes we should just be like, hey, next Tuesday, let's just everyone, go do something.
Yeah, Like let's get to the shop early, crush out work, make sure all the animals are okay, and then
check our animals, do the minimum work, make sure everything's watered and fed, and then let's go to Frankenmuth or whatever, someplace where we can just walk around.
It does help with morale of your crew, of course, dude.
And so a nice rink would be great, man. I believe you, Nick. I'm all about it, bro.
Tiffany says, "How's your daughter Jade doing? How far along is she now?" She's getting close, man.
Thank you so much for asking. She's 7 weeks away. I'll see her either tomorrow night or Monday. I'll see her. So it's been a couple weeks since I've seen her, and at this stage, a couple weeks makes a big difference. Because I hadn't seen her for about a month before, and she looked like she had a baby bump and stuff like that, but nothing too big. Like she, a month before I had just seen her a couple weeks ago. She's one of those people you probably wouldn't go up and say, "Are you pregnant?" Because maybe she's just got a big belly. Or now she's pregnant. What I mean? She's
there's no doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt she's not pregnant. And now it's been a couple weeks. As a matter of fact, today was Lori was at her second baby shower for my son-in-law's side. So this is the second baby shower. So Lori was with her today. Lori's now back, obviously crawling around the podcast room. But we'll see her, like I said, either tomorrow night or Monday. We're gonna go visit her. So yeah, she's doing good. 7 weeks away.
Gecko Geek came back to say my daughter's name is Kira. I didn't say it in the super chat earlier, but happy birthday, Kira.
Have like an adult.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
And but happy birthday to your son.
Yeah, I hope you guys have an awesome time.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. That's what was it? What was the? So Alice Cooper was 18, right?
What?
18.
Yeah.
I like it. And then there was.
Oh, you're trying to get
Winger.
me on 80s
I think
songs,
Winger
dude?
was it Winger? Was she's only 17?
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that song anymore. It's 2021.
If you think about that, that is the most ridiculous thing. Because these guys were probably in their mid-20s.
Oh yeah,
and they wrote a song that she's only 17.
And they've been singing. They were probably singing it for.
And they're probably
decades.
they're probably 50 now and still singing that song. She's only
not
17.
a great look in this year.
It's So life is different now. You couldn't write that. I'm trying to think. There's got to be a 16 song.
Oh, there's gotta be.
But anyways, those are the only two that come to mind.
Edward says, "Can't wait to see the mermaid tank."
Man, you laugh, but
we having mermaids. I got the hookup, right?
Yeah, I think we're seriously going to do So in the Stingray tank, I think we will bring a mermaid in on the weekends and have them swim.
It'll be so pretty.
Yeah,
man.
I think we'll do a mermaid.
And like I said, I'm not even kidding. I got the mermaid hookup. Bro.
Yeah. No, I seriously think we'll do a mermaid for sure.
Josh says, "Hey guys, how about raffling some babies off? $10 a ticket to raise money for the expansion."
Listen, I love all your ideas. As a matter of fact, an idea that someone brought up on, I can't remember if it's on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it was today, I liked was to do a mystery box. Maybe it's like $25 a month for a mystery box, and we send you something.
Oh, that's
you don't know what
cool
you don't
idea,
know what
yeah.
it is. It might be a Reptarium shirt. It might be a hat. It might be a couple different things. It might be maybe a stuffed animal from the thing. And I love that idea. I think that's a really cool idea. It's something I want to give some more thought to. I'm not a big fan of raffling or giving away snakes, to be totally honest with you, for a couple reasons. I want people to choose their snake. And I want them to be happy with that snake. And I want them to also pay for that snake, right? Because if you're paying $10 for a snake, you may not have the same emotional attachment if you pay full price for a snake. So I've never been a fan of giveaways when it comes to live animals. Giveaways are fine. I don't mind giving away. But live animals, I don't like to give away. I don't like to raffle. I don't like to do anything like that. The other thing that you do have to keep in mind with that is that in actuality, and there's several people that do this on Facebook now and Instagram, it is illegal to raffle off an animal because it's a lottery. Yep. And you can't gamble. That's gambling. You have to have a gambling license to raffle that off, or be a 501c3 nonprofit when you do raffle tickets or something like that. So although it happens every day,
but you're not getting caught.
But the fact is that it is illegal, and I don't want to do anything illegal that could potentially come back and hurt us in the future. So, those are the reasons I don't do that.
Zach says he threw 50 for this, man. He
Zach,
says
thanks,
first
man.
super.
Wow, thank
Brian's
you,
the
Zach.
reason me and my fiance have 16 snakes.
Wow.
Love what you do, Brian. Huge inspiration, and can't wait to see the expansion start and finish.
Well, Zach, thank you so much.
Yes,
first
thank
off,
you,
for your
Zach.
first super, and
On a
also,
first tonight.
Yeah, thanks. You guys are killing it. I appreciate you guys, and thanks. You know, we try to inspire. See, this is the thing I always say is that you know, I like to be an example to people that are kind of the underdogs, right? Like I didn't come from money. I didn't go to a school for business. I didn't have anyone hand me anything. I never had a partnership that, you know, had a bunch of money. And you know, we've had ups and downs, man. We've taken our beatings over the years. But we've always kind of gotten up and we've always done things. But the one thing that has always been important to me is to go after what I really believe in my dreams, right? And I want to inspire people to do that, you know, and that doesn't mean reptiles for per se. Maybe for you it's, you know, making jewelry or whatever the case is, you know. But I think life is really too short to do something that you hate, right? And so many people in the world do things they don't love. You know, and I don't think that that's the way you should live. I don't think you should live. Now, I don't think, I'll be totally honest with you, and I gotta stop saying I'll be totally honest with you. That's one of the words
I know, and it's so natural though that I don't even think about it.
I say it too much, and I don't, because my therapist said that I say it too much, and
But
she
you know
said,
what's funny though? She's just a person.
No, I
you know
get
what I mean?
that.
And here's the thing, like when you say it, I don't think that. Like what she said, like I immediately think of it as filler. Like the same thing. Like it's like you saying like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
so we all have fillers, right? Exactly. We all have fillers that get us to these places. And one of my fillers is, I'll be honest with you. Some people use the I try not to ever, I very rarely use
I like, I'd rather be honest with you than
Yeah, I try not to, I try to flow my sentences, but that is a filler for me. What she says, though, is what she's told me is that when someone says, I'll be honest with you, you feel like they're maybe lying to you, or they had been lying to you and now are suddenly going to be honest. You know?
It puts the thought in your head.
Yeah,
like, were they honest?
So I hate that I said I'm going to be honest with you, but
to be honest with you, it doesn't bother me.
But I can't remember, what was I even talking about before I got off that engine. Inspiration, stuff like that.
Yeah, you were talking about like you want to be an inspiration. You were like for people that are underdogs that didn't come from anything. It's a waste to live your life.
Yeah. There was a point that I was going to get to, though.
that I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I know you don't know it either. And that was a point that I was going to get to that was pretty profound, but apparently not profound enough for me to remember.
We'll get it.
But yeah, so, you know, my point is that, you know, I want to inspire people to live their dream, you know, and this is what I was going to say, is that I don't know that most people would want to live my dream, because my life isn't, what I do is amazing, and the opportunities that it brings me is amazing, and I love everything, and I love doing what I do. From a quality of life standpoint, probably not the best quality of life, to be honest with you. My balance is pretty far off. I work way too much. I don't really do anything for enjoyment other than work. Now, you got to remember, what I work, I love, you know, but I don't, you know, I don't play hockey like I used to years ago. I don't go and do things, you know, that people, like, I don't have a hobby, you know. I don't have, like, I don't go do things like other people. I don't go fishing. I don't do any of that. I just work, you know. And so, you know, it's okay for me. I'm willing to sacrifice that, you know, because I think that
you do what you love.
Yeah, because I do what I love, number one, and number two, I feel there's something more than that as well. The inspirational side, the motivation side, the changing people's life side. You know, I mean, to me, if I sacrifice some of my kind of personal freedoms, let's say, but I'm changing people's opinions of something I love so dearly, like reptiles, I'm willing to sacrifice that.
Right.
And on a very analogous, but don't take it like I think that I'm anywhere like that. Like Elon Musk, who I'm a huge fan of, I've talked a million times, he has sacrificed his personal life for the greater good.
That didn't age well.
good of people.
I
Now,
agree,
I'm
yeah.
not. Listen, I'm not Elon
No,
Musk,
but I know what you
and what
mean.
I'm doing isn't changing the world. What I'm doing, I'm hoping, is changing
Arguable.
people. I'm hoping I'm changing some people's world, not only through loving of animals, but also through loving of life and trying to take a path that is what. And that's part of this No Pizza November and this health thing too. Is I want to inspire that too, because the truth is that we could be as successful, either business success or personal success, as we want. And if we die young, what did it do for us?
Right.
Right. And I want to live a long time. I'm a guy that, number one, thinks retirement is repugnant. Right. I think that one of the worst things anyone can do is retire. I really believe this. And I know some of you guys are out there working a job, or you're working, and you're like, hey, I'm just saving for retirement so I can. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I think that, there's that old saying, you use it or lose it, right? And now I'm in this position where my mom, my stepmom, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, all these people have started retiring over the last few years. And I've seen this rapid deterioration
right?
of their lively and they're like different people in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Not to mention, live for today, not for 65. Number one, you don't know if you're going to be around at 65.
right.
Number two, when you're 65, you're not 40. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not going to be climbing mountains.
Yeah,
like
at 40, you can. Yeah, let's go climb Kilimanjaro. At 65, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you don't know what your health is, and especially if your health isn't good to begin with. You're at 65. You're definitely not killing. I want to climb Kilimanjaro when I'm 65.
Yeah, and it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and the only way to do that is to keep healthy. Look at William Shatner, 90 years old. Dude flies to space. You know
So
what I mean?
sick.
I literally watched a show last night on History Channel. It's called Unexplained Files. Dude, sharp as a tack at 90, man. And you know why? Because he didn't stop.
Yep, he's still doing it.
And that doesn't mean work your shit job till you're 90. That means
keep
do
moving
something,
around till you get where you want to
yeah,
be,
and
right?
then when you're 90, you won't want to stop working because you're going to love what you do. And I never want to stop that. But that being said, quality of life, probably not what most people. If most people lived the life I lived, they probably wouldn't be happy.
But we're
because
getting you there, baby.
No, and I'm happy. I'm not complaining. I'm not unhappy. I mean, I'm getting better every day with my happiness and my sanity and mental health. But at the same time, I'm not waking up on Monday and going like, oh, I can't wait till Wednesday when I can go bowling with my bowling league or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's what some people do, and that's great. I actually admire that, and I actually sometimes wish that I had that in me, where I was like, man, I wish I could just, can't wait till Wednesday when the new Seinfeld comes out or whatever the show is, or, obviously Seinfeld's old, but whatever.
Yeah.
You get my point.
Brad said still thinking about getting a shark. What kind and from where?
Yeah, so we definitely want to add a couple different types of sharks. Definitely bamboo sharks will be in the Stingray tank. Possibly nurse shark, not sure yet. Not sure about that one, but possibly a nurse shark. But definitely bamboos. And then we will definitely have a black tip reef shark tank.
So sick.
That's 100% for sure, because they are they're miniature great whites, right? I mean, they're the shark that looks the most like a great white but stays small, and they still get big. So we're gonna have a really big tank to house these and we plan on doing that. And of course you need to have a cylinder tank because you can't have corners unless they're, I mean, if you have a 50-foot long thing, you can have corners, but sharks, they have to continually be moving, and if there's a corner they can bump into it and it can be a problem, and they stress out with corners. So unless you have a gigantic 100,000 gallon tank, you can't do that. But we won't have that type of size, but it's going to be a giant tank that will be cylinder for black tip reef sharks. So as far as where to get it, we have a few fish people we work with, or are talking with, I should say, and we'll decide which ones have the most humane way of getting every single fish we get. And I don't know the answer to that yet. That's still something I'm working on.
Edward came back to say, props to Brian for the weight loss. Now just get on some vitamin S, and we're talking about winning bodybuilding shows. It's steroids, mister.
Steroids. So I'll tell you, I just got off a 5-day steroid.
For prednisone.
Prednisone, not like shooting steroids.
Juicing.
But prednisone, and I will never do that again.
Yeah.
It was, if you have anxiety, you do not want to take prednisone, a steroid. so not only the 5 days I took it, I was effed up, but 5 days after I took it, I was unbelievably anxious. I've been really great anxiety-wise for the last few months, almost no anxiety, if any at all. I was a mess for 10 days straight.
Yep.
You know, just the last 2 days is when I started to feel better again. I still don't feel perfect, but I feel almost back to normal. And
no steroids for this young buck.
and it's, ironically enough, I talked to a friend of mine that's a gym rat that does steroids.
Yeah.
And I asked her this. I said, when you take normal steroids, you have that same reaction? And she said, absolutely. She said, you know, someone that would be anxious would not want to take steroids, you know, metabolic, or what do they call it? Anaerobic, or
anaerobic, or are you talking about HGH or?
Well, there's different. There's like
there's
HGH.
So many,
there's like what are horse steroids that bodybuilders take or whatever.
That's crazy.
So yeah, no, I couldn't possibly do it. But thank you for
the advice. Clistia says, I haven't had pizza since 2017.
Wow.
You're a strong woman.
So I wonder if you have like a gluten issue or
celiacs or whatever.
Yeah, celiacs, exactly. That's what Dan had, right?
Yeah, that's what he was telling us.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
But yeah, or you're just really strong-willed
woman.
Because I don't know who wouldn't want to have pizza if you could eat pizza.
I mean,
Listen,
on,
if
dude.
pizza was healthy, it's all I would eat.
Yeah, duh.
Like, I mean,
dude.
all
if
I
it
would
was
eat, you know?
If it was like a green bean, yeah, I'm crushing pizzas, dude.
Like I wouldn't eat anything. I would push the frosted flakes away.
Vegetarian, easy, dude.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah, no, it's I love pizza, but yeah, no, not and pizza's just the symbolic.
Yeah.
No pizza November
It's
isn't
cookies,
just no pizza.
sugar, fats,
it's everything.
ice cream.
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, just anything that's not good for you. And it's not like I'm dieting. I'm trying to change my way of life.
Yes.
You know, and like I said, I've done it before. I've done it where for a year or two I've been clean as could be. You know, and not I mean, once in a great while. You know, it's good to have, if you guys don't know this, when you're going through fitness and stuff like that, it's good to every now and then have what they call a cheat meal, you know? So to have a pizza every now and then is actually good for you because it resets your system, right? So when your system is used to not having, certain things, it adjusts to that. And then it becomes, that's the new norm, right? And then you have a cheat meal where you carb yourself up and all of a sudden your system goes, oh shit, let's go back into high gear again, So it's actually important to every now and then. But some people do like once, when you're in like good health, some people do like once a week cheat meal. But I always think that when I get started, I want to go 6 or 8 weeks with nothing before I do my first cheat meal.
Wild Boy Dev asked, would you consider getting a mantis shrimp tank? And it's,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's on the list. It's on the list for sure.
Oh, and he says, if need help with the build, I'm there 100%.
I appreciate you, brother. Nice. Yeah, he just came out. We just filmed some heat.
Oh, you guys are going to be so excited.
So it'll be really good. Yeah, so most of the enclosures, aquariums, I should say, tanks, whatever you want to call them, will be really large, right? But we'll have some smaller tanks, not many, but some. So like a jelly tank probably won't be giant. It might be 500 gallons, maybe 300 gallons, but it's not going to be 5,000 gallons like most of our tanks.
Right.
And then we'll have the manna shrimp can be something that can be in a very small tank. We got those. I can't remember what those eels, the little that come out of like they're all.
Are you talking about those like tube eels, like the ones that like look like grass almost?
Yeah. Do you remember what those are called? So I just can't remember what they're called, but those are another one that we'll have in a smaller tank. What little eel? That looks like.
I'm just gonna put that stick up. I'm sure they'll find it.
Yeah, probably. Yep, there they are. Yep, there they are.
Disappearing garden eel. Is that what
garden eels is what
garden
they're
eels?
called.
Okay.
Garden
Which
eels.
makes sense. Looks like a bunch of little plants.
Yeah, so we'll have
I love
garden
them.
eels.
Man. They got personality.
And we'll certainly have. Then we'll have a big tank with like a big, like moray eel in it. But that'll be a giant tank. So, but yeah, so we'll have some smaller stuff. But yeah.
Timothy through 5,000. I don't see his comment, but I will look for it.
Thanks,
for
Timothy.
us.
I appreciate you, man.
Sean says, "Hey Brian and family. Hey Jay and crew. What happened to the guy whose zoo got broke into twice? Mr. Crutchfield, I'm guessing."
So Tom Crutchfield. So it's a weird thing, right? I saw a post from Tom, and I was a little bit confused about it. I haven't talked to him about it, but I saw a post saying, we've been over to the guy. We found the guy that did it. We've been to his house 4 times. We've even flown drones, and we just got back a couple lizards. But then the post said, if you don't return Jimmy, the croc monitor, immediately, you're gonna pay the consequence. And so I was a little confused about that because I was like, okay, so you've been there 4 times, you got some animals back, but you didn't get Jimmy back. So
maybe he got rid of Jimmy already to someone else.
But what was confusing is like the cops would have been involved because I knew the cops were there.
Yeah.
The second time, Tom got broke into, and FWC was involved even the first time. So if you found the guy, you really wouldn't be making threats to him because the police would already have him arrested.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on there, and I'm not trying to insinuate anything with Tom. I just was confused by the post, and I don't know.
I'm sure it's deeper. Yeah, it's probably
there was something that didn't get explained well in that post, where it's like, okay, you've been there 4 times. I'm assuming with the authorities. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would think then the person would probably be arrested if they were caught. And then I don't know where Jimmy is. I don't know. So my understanding is they maybe got everything back, but the croc monitor.
Well, hopefully they get it.
And there's always a chance, of course, you got to remember that the croc monitor may be gone, right? I mean, it may have all these cages they stole some things, but they also let cages open. And I don't know about you, but Jimmy was a gigantic croc monitor. I don't know that I'm going in and taking that animal. Maybe they just opened the cage and maybe that monitor just got loose and is running around South Florida somewhere right now. I don't know. Again, I'm just speculating, but I hope for Tom's sake that I hope for 2 things. Number 1, for Tom's sake, that he gets all his animals back, and number 2, I hope that whoever did it was brought to justice.
Yeah,
it doesn't just get a verbal warning, but it should go to jail.
I think. I mean, what they did was an environmental hazard. I mean, it's like a nuclear bomb of environmental hazards. Like they need to be super punished for that.
Well, you
had
breaking in, you had property damage, you had killing of an animal, so animal cruelty, and then you had theft. So those are some pretty, and like you said, somewhere in there is an environmental thing
100%,
with the FWC. So I mean, I would think that person would be facing a dozen years in prison. So
let's hope they do.
So but I unfortunately I don't know what the whole story is, so I wish I knew more.
Let Roseburn says, how are people going to function? People are already disillusioned and don't want to live in reality. This is just going to make things worse. Well, now they won't have to live in reality. That's
there'll be a new reality, right? And the people, it's like you said. I think that the Jays of the world, I think I'll be in this case too. That I will probably be interested in being involved in the augmented reality, but I will also walk away from it. And then there will be people that won't walk away from it, and they'll live their entire life. And then when you really want to go down that rabbit hole, which is very easy to do, by the way. If we're talking 10 years from now, we're Ready Player One. What's 10 years from then? 10 years from then, we're what we are right now. And then you have to ask yourself, is everything that we're doing just a simulation?
Has this happened before?
Yeah. Are we just now
doing it over and over and over?
Are we just doing? Is there somewhere playing this game?
Yeah. It's almost like those Russian
nesting
nesting dolls, right? Like a doll inside a doll inside a doll, and it's like, is that what we're going through right now? Is we're creating a universe?
And maybe you can even get even deeper where, maybe that's what the multiverse is, right?
Right.
Maybe the multiverse is just a series of games that are being played on a augmented reality sense. And I don't know. I mean,
and the thing is, let
hard.
Roses burn is like, think about like you're saying like, people are already disillusioned and don't want to live in reality, but that's exactly right. People are already doing that. People already don't live in reality. People live their whole lives on their computer or phone. It's just that now it's going to look more like a video game and less like a website.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that there's a lot of good and some,
a lot of bad
and
too,
some bad that's going to come with this. And I don't think you can't do one without the other. It's much like the argument with artificial intelligence, right? Prior to the metaverse, artificial intelligence was the thing that everyone was looking at is like, oh my gosh. And now, of course, we don't realize that artificial intelligence is all around us.
Oh yeah. It's like
it's already around us, I mean,
all my programs use it now.
Yeah. All the programs are using artificial intelligence. And we haven't been killed off yet. You know, there hasn't been the Terminator situation yet.
We still got time.
And listen, I mean, obviously we saw that Elon produced that first very humanoid looking
Tesla bot.
Tesla bot. That's going to be coming in the future too, right?
All these things will converge too, right? Because you'll have Neuralink. So now you don't have to wear the glasses anymore. You don't have to wear any headgear or headphones. Now you'll have a chip in your brain that you can go into the metaverse in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now you close your eyes. It's almost a dream at that point.
It's going to be a crazy life, and the thing that's interesting is that it's all going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years, which means hopefully we're all here to
we'll be here. Yeah.
Hopefully we're all here to see it come to fruition, and it's going to be wild. And it's the one good thing I've said is that, and I've talked to Jay about this, is that in America we're trillions of dollars in debt. The national debt is more money than actually is on the planet, and it's been forever since we've balanced the budget, and we're always having budgetary issues. But what happens is that the last time we kind of balanced the budget was in the .com era, when the internet was born, right?
A new era,
and this is the next new era.
Yeah.
This is
it's a new area of commerce.
This is the new. I mean, this is going to create things that no one even knew could be created.
Yeah.
And I do have hope for the future, in the sense that although there's some negativity with the metaverse, I think that it's going to bring so much opportunity to the world, and hopefully not just the rich people will benefit from it, but hopefully all of humanity will benefit from it. Let's hope anyways.
Well, what's funny? It reminds me of, or not reminds me, I wasn't around for this, but it's kind of synonymous to like the nuclear bomb, right?
Yeah.
Like the nuclear bomb obviously at first brought massive death to innocent people.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
now it saves death.
I would say, there's less wars than there would have ever been if there was no nuclear bombs, and more bloodshed would have happened without it.
It's much like Tesla's death ray, right?
Yeah.
When Tesla was creating the death ray, and again, if you want to get into conspiracy theories, a lot of people think that Tesla was killed because of the death ray.
I could see that.
And listen, there's a lot of crazy stuff happened that, he was trying to create this death ray, which, by the way, nobody was willing to fund. He was pitching it to the richest people in the world, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds,
JP Morgans,
JP Morgans of the world, and governments of the world as well. And no one was willing to fund it. But when he ultimately was found dead in his apartment, the FBI came in and took all of his paperwork, all of it.
Yep.
Right. And what he said, that he came up with this death ray that could shoot down any plane or any missile or anything up to 200 miles away with this just ray, this burst of energy, this pulse of energy. And this is back what? I don't even know when
he was in the 1800s.
Yeah, like
right?
I mean, we're talking like late 1800s, early 1900s, and a lot of people think that he was killed. When did he live? Let's see, he died in 1943.
Did he?
Yeah, 1943 at the New Yorker Hotel.
And he was born in 1856.
Yeah, so sometime probably in the early 1900s is when the death ray thing happened. And but what he was saying was that this will stop all wars around the whole world.
Yeah.
Because he wanted every nation to have a death ray.
Yep.
And it would protect your borders, every nation on the planet. And that's why I think Elon Musk and Tesla are so similar, is that they think from a global and really humanitarian standpoint. And even, like obviously now Elon is all about, saving humanity by getting off of this planet, right?
Hello? What? What the hell? There's a documentary out there on Elon, and it's the one thing that stuck with me from this documentary was one of the people that work with him. They straight up said, Elon wants to be the one to save the world, but if he's not the one to do it, he's fine letting it burn. So there's that.
Which is absolutely true. I mean, it doesn't take a genius. We will not be able to survive this
forever.
Planet.
Yeah.
I mean, we may for another 1,000 years,
maybe another billion. You never know.
But
it's
eventually,
never
we will not be able to survive on this planet.
Yeah.
And he's saying the only way that human beings can survive is to be interplanetary, right? And so Tesla had that very similar attitude about humanity, and he felt that if every country had a death ray, no one could invade your country.
Yep.
and there would be no war. There would ever be no one would try to invade a country because they would be immediately shot down by this death ray.
Yeah.
And then of course he died, and they took, the FBI took all his paperwork.
Because it turns out the military industrial complex makes a lot of money.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's interesting, right?
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Tego King says, "Hey guys, I want to thank you again for shouting out Cold-Blooded Exotics. Love the pod. Have you heard of Two Simple self-driving 18-wheelers?" I've heard of the self-driving 18-wheelers, but not from that company.
Yeah, I haven't heard from. Yeah, there's a couple. There's Nikola obviously is one of the companies. Tesla obviously has made a 4-wheel or 18-wheeler, and I have not heard of that company.
I forget what it was. It might be Rivian or something. Did you see what Amazon just made a new?
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah,
Rivian, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I saw that too. So
Rivian.
Yeah, and they're self-driving.
Because all their Amazon trucks are going to be these now.
Yep, exactly.
Just like this almost.
I saw that. Yep.
How crazy is that, dude?
Yeah, all self-driving, and it's that's another thing that'll happen in our in the very near future.
It'll be weird to drive. It'll be like seeing somebody drive horse and buggy to see somebody drive in the next 100 years.
I mean, listen, we're in some of the most exciting times that ever happened, and
well, you think like
I don't know what
when I was growing up, we would see like the Jetsons and stuff, and it was always talking about times around now, right? Yep. And we all were like, well, obviously that's not happening. 1984 didn't happen,
Yeah.
But now it is. It's like really happening. It's cool.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a company called Jetson.
The drone.
Put out the drone. Yeah, it's called the Jetsons. Nuts. So it's. Now I don't think I'll get into one of those.
I will. That's how I'm coming to work tomorrow, dude.
I just don't know, and I think it was like $60,000.
Oh, they're going to be expensive for a bit.
But 60 wasn't that much. I didn't.
Oh
think.
wait, well yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I guess that's only like 15 more than my Jeep.
That's what I'm saying.
I'd get one
most cars are $60,000 these days.
Damn it! God damn it, Fluffy! No! I love Fluffy. Come back. Oh, that's horrible. Why? Fluffy. Okay. Well, anyways. Scorched muffins. You give me a hi. Now tell me how you've been. Speak. don't remember how to get the thingies. Oops. I know. Why won't you work? Fuck this gate. I don't know what to do. How do I do this? Track. What if I just did a little bit of this? And then airlock? Airlock, please? No? No airlock? Fuck. It got real quiet, and I don't understand why. I don't understand how this stupid airlock work. Fuck! Oops, oops, oops. Maybe it does have to be straight. Okay. Uh, I have been asked to go take some chicken out of the freezer, so give me just a minute. I will be right back. Let me grab just some chill something. Oh, there goes my headset. Let's see here. There's some lo-fi to listen to. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, testing. Turn this back up. Okay. And now, hello, Newt. I'm not sure what you want. It's my cat. One of my cats. Okay. All right, that's back on. I should really get an intermission page instead, is what I should do. We've got somewhere around 30 minutes left of the Brian Barchett podcast, so we'll go ahead and push play on that.
I mean, to be able to just fly around, I mean, that
next
seems
whip.
reasonable, but I don't know that I could do it, man. It's going to take me a while. I don't like to fly, so
yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah. To have no, you're
so,
like bigger the plane, the better, and here you are in a
little tiny
motorcycle.
This thing should be on the ground, not 200 feet in the air.
Love it.
Yeah.
Let Rose Byrne says, so are you coming for Winter Croc Fest?
Yes.
Is it just Saturday or all weekend?
So my understanding is it's just Saturday. And yes, we are coming. So it's hosted by Gatorland.
We're going to have such a blast.
It's on the 11th of December, and I will be there. So yeah, I'm looking
So be there,
forward
be
to that.
square, y'all.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to being there. I don't know exactly when I'm going to get there. I think festivities start at noon. I think it officially starts at 3:30.
I'm going to Google this.
And there's some I know a couple secret things that are happening between noon and 12 or noon and 3:30, but I'm not at liberty to tell you.
So there you go.
But it'll be fun.
Yeah, so make sure you come. I'm sure we'll see a bunch of the people we've seen last time.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Edward says the horse steroid you mentioned is Tren. Absolutely stay natural. Used to be on steroids, and it is absolutely not worth it. Expensive and unhealthy to the max.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, number one, would never want to. I'm not that guy. You know, I'm not vain. I don't. You know, I want to. Everyone wants to look good because why wouldn't you? But it's more about health for me than anything. You know, I'm not Brad Pitt. I'm never going to be Brad Pitt. I'm, or whatever. I mean, it's like, I am who I am. I'm just a fucking
I'm
snake.
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, I'm Shawn Michaels.
If you were like, dude, I wish you would have done that. I am who I am. I'm Shawn
Michaels. Yeah. So it's never about like, I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone wants to look better than they look, now. And I'll be honest with you, what motivated, there was two motivations to my health kick. One was getting healthy because I've really been dealing with sickness this last few months where I've just had this chronic cold, chronic cough, chronic issues. I realized I needed to get healthy. But the other thing was seeing pictures and videos where I'm like, holy crap, I look really pudgy. I normally am a pretty slim guy, and so, yeah, everyone wants to look good, but I would never sacrifice. So my thoughts of getting healthy are to live longer and healthier.
Yeah.
And taking steroids is the exact opposite of that.
It's to look
it's
better.
to look good now, but sacrifice the future.
Yeah.
And
I don't even know if looking good's the right word for it. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'd rather somebody look like trim and cut than like bulky and big anyway.
Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah. I don't mean like bodybuilder, but some people take roids to thin out and to get like kind of really jacked, but not jacked.
Cut.
Like, I mean, it's funny because have you seen this recent thing with Will Smith?
No.
Where he's got a show on YouTube, getting in health in 20 weeks, getting in shape in 20 weeks.
No.
And I mean, he will listen. We've seen, iRobot and so many of these other movies where, I Am Legend, where the dude's ripped, jacked. He looks like me right now.
Really?
Punch up a picture of Will Smith right now. Just go like, Will Smith dad body or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And I love the fact that he takes people. That's the thing I love about him is that, I mean, look at this dude, man.
We're getting it, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he's
fucking.
I mean, look the one on the
We're getting it, bro.
Yeah, he's definitely he's definitely not jacked right now. There's no doubt about that.
This now people are doing it. There's a trend now. That's classic.
Yeah. But
he's an interesting one on social media too, man.
He's a great dude, man. I mean, I know people that know him, and I've heard nothing but great things about him from people that know him. And I think it's great that again he's trying to inspire people to get in shape. He just said, "Hey, listen, COVID was it was really easy to go to the cupboard and eat cookies all day, and
especially when no one was going to see you."
Yeah, and he said, he goes, and this is what it turned into. So instead of hiding from it, he decided to take it public and say,
Air it out.
listen, I'm gonna get in shape right in front of you guys for the next 20 weeks. And,
Wow, that's awesome.
And it's pretty awesome. So he's a smart dude.
Yeah,
man.
he is.
Smart dude, man.
Solid Serpent says, "Hey Jay, have you seen Photo Arc on Disney Plus? I have not, but I've put it in my my list of things to watch, so I will definitely check it out."
You know what came out?
Dude, that movie on Disney Plus that he's talking about, Photo Arc, is phenomenal. It is so good. I mean, it's good. It's good. It's not like the best thing ever, but I love the Photo Arc. It is such a good idea. I have two of his books, and they're pretty nice.
What's the Marvel martial arts like Shinshu or whatever?
Oh, dude, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You
It came
better
out.
for that.
Yeah, it came out a few months ago. It came out this weekend on Disney Plus for free.
Oh, hell
so
yeah.
I haven't watched it. I heard it's amazing, so I'm going to see that. And then of course there was the Ryan Reynolds Rock movie about them being bank robbers.
Oh,
or
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That came out this weekend as well on
Disney Plus.
Netflix.
Oh, on Netflix?
Netflix.
Wow,
So
that's a first.
So yeah, that's going to be. I think that's probably. I would imagine that's going to be the highest budget movie ever for Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix
You know.
dropping the ball, by the way, in the last couple. Like,
yeah, it's not as good as it did.
it's
Although
just
Lock
weird.
and Key was good.
Yeah, there's a lot of great shows. Don't get me wrong, but definitely dropping it, bro.
Well, they've got so much competition now. You know, that's
I
the
know,
problem. I mean,
but you would think you would have been like, oh, okay, you like almost like seeing
Well,
the tides rise. You know,
well,
like
I know that they said they were putting out 100 movies or
This year, right?
100 series this year alone.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they're dropping the ball. I just think that they haven't hit the home run very much. I mean, they obviously did with Squid Games,
Yeah.
and there's been a few other. Lock and Key has been really good, and there's been a few other things. But I think now just the fact that Disney pulled most of their stuff off of Netflix, and then
I know, what a shame.
There's so many shows that have pulled their-
Paramount. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody. I mean, everybody has made their own thing. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and it's so it's just
Such a
it's a
bummer,
very
man.
it's a very difficult world to compete in right now, and it's hard to decide even what.
Well, it puts
streaming,
consumers
yeah.
in a weird spot, right? Because we're all like, well, I like this show, but I also like this show. So now I got to get 42 different streaming platforms
Yeah,
and pay
yeah,
$180 a month. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, the streaming networks are.
It's almost like
so
back to
many-
cable.
Yeah, it's back to basic cable.
Someone's going to
plus,
come out with one. Like, I got an idea. We'll put all the channels on one box and put
Yeah.
it in your house.
Wow, this is good.
That's
Yeah, back to
crazy.
1980.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Chris says, proud of you, brother. Can't wait to visit.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you, man.
And then the last one I got right now is Edward, and he says that dad bod of yours is going to turn into a granddad bod. Congratulations. Love
You're
it.
absolutely right about that. I mean, the granddad bod is that's a totally different thing. I mean, it's crazy to think that here in literally 7 weeks,
Which is no time.
Which is I mean, the time goes by so quick, but and that's kind of the same thing. Getting back to the expansion and stuff like that is it's it seems like the summer of 2023 is a long way off. But there's so much going to be happening between now and then, and once we actually break ground, it's going to be just a whirlwind.
Yeah, be like, open your eyes. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, it's just going to be like every day there's something new going on. And I've said that I visualize a lot, right? Like I talk about manifesting and visualization a lot, and so there's a couple things that I visualize right now, and the first one is when I pull up down Van Dyke for the first time and the entire front is done. Well, I really think the first time is when I see the structure when it comes to the steel. Yeah. And then the next one would be it done, the front being completely like the windows are in and it's now I see the facade of the front of the building. That's one. And then the next one is walking through the aquarium. And the Reptarium, quite frankly, the
Just
new
the
part of the
building,
Reptarium, like walking through it when it's finally done. And I've thought about, like, I visualized a lot, like putting, the stingrays in the tank for the first time.
Yeah.
What's that day going to feel like? You know what I mean? Like all of these months and really years of working towards something to finally see those moments are going to be, I mean, it will probably, quite frankly, eclipse anything that happened at the Reptarium, because you got to remember when we did the first Reptarium, number one, it was a whirlwind. We didn't even know what we were doing, and I remember I remember we opened at 4:00 on a Friday, And I remember at 3:30, there was 75 or 100 people standing out front of the building waiting to get in. And we were literally still putting animals in cages. And like 10 minutes to, we were done putting animals in cages. And we had like 10 minutes to take a breath and say, all right, this is what
you
we
guys
hope
worked all
happens.
night before.
Yeah, and we worked till 4 a.m. on cages, and we came back at 7 a.m. And from 7 a.m. till 10 minutes to 4, we were working to get this stuff. I mean, so that's how close it was. With 2.0 was a little bit different. A
little better.
We were kind of, we were ahead of the game a little bit.
Less animals too.
And I will say that some of the experiences, there's less enclosures, you know, because they were bigger, more grand enclosures. But I think that it was still a really putting like Ivy in that big cage was amazing, and putting Perdita in a bigger cage. I mean, all these things were really spectacular in 2.0, but 3.0 is a whole different game. 3 and 4.0, I guess you can say, whole different game, because now we're going to be doing something that is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're going from like, all right, we're spending $300,000 or $400,000, and or on the 2.0, $400,000. To spending $4 million.
Went from a house to a mansion real quick. You know what I mean?
And the difference is that when I spent that money on the first two, if it would have went belly up, I would have walked away from it unscathed. They've been like, oh, that sucked, but life goes on. This is like, I'm putting on the line, man. You know what I mean? It's like it's going to be blood, sweat, tears. My future is on the line. This doesn't work, and there's no safety net, and there's no plan B. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think that the other thing is, I think to some extent, I think that 2.0 is relatively impressive. I think that it rivals most public zoos with that. I think 1.0 some stuff does, some stuff doesn't. We still have we still have Zoom egg cages, right? That are don't look like Zoom egg cages because of the way we fixtured them up, but they are still Zoom egg cages. Whereas 2.0 was all custom built giant glass enclosures. This iteration with the new expansion of the Reptarium and the aquarium is going to be world class.
This will be real zoo-esque.
And listen, it's not the Atlanta Aquarium, because the Atlanta Aquarium was $100 million.
And afforded by
or maybe $200 million. It was something. I think that the whale shark tank alone was like $50 million or something like that. We don't have that kind of money, right? So this is a miniature version, but we're basically taking all of the knowledge that we've gained from going to aquariums and zoos, and we're trying to plug it into a smaller version of that, and make it really impressive. So I think that the emotional side, I think I guess to wrap that up, you guys are going to see me cry a bit. There's no doubt about it. You're going to see me tear up a lot, I think, when we're through this project. And so there'll be some happy tears, and there's going to be some sad tears. I'm sure there's going to be some stress and anxiety that goes along with it. That there'll be days I feel defeated,
of course,
and there'll be days that I feel on top of the world.
Dude, this is what my username is about. Except misery. There's gonna be hard days, and then there's gonna be good days. So that's what it's all about.
And there'll be days that I guarantee you, the morning that we
partially got that from Brian Barczyk. Okay, so
we start crushing the cement out front for foundations, I will think I'm making the biggest mistake I've ever made. That morning I will doubt everything that I thought. I all the things that I thought were right, I will doubt that day, because I'll be like, what have I done? There's no turning back now. And but I think that feeling will shift pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, dude.
From oh my God, what have I done, to
here we go.
All right, let's go. This is going to be a blast. And I think I'm going to enjoy. Sick. I'm going to try to, and I'm going to continue to tell myself daily to enjoy the journey. To
that's
enjoy
important. And almost like think of this podcast right now, where know ahead of time, you're like, this day is going to be bad, but there's brighter ones to come. You know what I mean? And that's all you got to remember, man.
Yeah, and I think it will. And
it's going to be a blast.
But when it's done, listen, I'm still doing this for me, right? I don't mean to sound selfish, but all of this is for me, not for the public. You know what I mean?
The
It's
public
like,
just gets to
you know,
hang out for a
I
bit.
mean, the public is a bonus, is what it is for me. You know, making money on it and seeing people's faces are a bonus. Those and those are incredible bonuses. I don't want to underestimate how amazing that is, but you know who'll be the first person in that Stingray tank, right? It's going to be me. It's not going to be anyone else, you know? And every experience that we have will be me first. And it's not just me first, but it's me a lot. You know, I will be, I'll be swimming in that tank just like I do the fish spa. I still do it, you know, at least once a week, you know? And I still get in with Ivy all the time. And I still, you know, feed Bowser, and I you know, all the things that, you know, get done, I still do all the.
I had to go check on my freaking dumbass cat, Goog. Yeah. There's a model WRX Subaru, and it's put on the entertainment center on top of the audio, and this little booger was putting his paw in there and opening the door of the model. He's nuts. But kind of cute sometimes, but sometimes also the worst thing in the world. Ugh, cats, man.
The time, even when I have crew that can do them, right? You know, I mean, there's times where we feed Elvis or Waffles when we don't have to. You know, I mean, we've got crew that does that. That's their job. But I'll be like, hey, today we're doing that. Or you know, I still feed snakes. I'm almost typically 9 out of 10 times I'm the only person that feeds the snakes at the Reptarium. I have Mike and I have Bruce that's what they do, you know, and
that's the best part.
They're completely capable of feeding the snakes. It's not like I'm worried about.
You're just like, come on,
it's like this is what I do, you know, and so you know, it's still, you know, the place that little Brian wanted, you know,
dude.
and so this is just on a level, and it's, you know, one thing I will say that's really cool, guys.
That took me way too fucking long.
Is that Lori's enthusiasm is really awesome.
Yeah.
You know, like she's super into it, man. She's like more into this expansion than she was even the Reptarium. And she was pretty into the Reptarium, to be honest with you, because I think it was the first thing that she said this to me once. She said, you know, BHB was your company.
Yeah.
You know, the Reptarium's our company.
Yep.
And
this is going to take that to a whole, like a real level,
right,
you know, like real pro shit.
Right.
Dude. Like,
yeah.
And, it's awesome.
And so, yeah, so it's pretty dope to see that, you know, and
for sure.
I can't wait to share. Yeah, you know, I can't wait till vlog number 1. And listen, when we start vlogging this expansion, it's going to be a year straight, 18 months straight of almost every day, you know, like building, next steps. And like I said, you're going to see me cry of happiness, and you're going to see me cry of being overwhelmed and thinking I made mistakes. But the day that we are done, you're going to see the most happy guy on the planet, you know, and that's just the truth. But I'm going to try to enjoy the journey too, even though I know the journey will be stressful.
Yeah. Let Rose Burn says, bummer, I got to work on the 11th, but this the Orinoco Crocs babies were awesome. Did they get babies over at
They got
Gatorland?
baby Orinoracles. I didn't know that was even public yet. So interesting. I didn't know that they were on or anything like that, but yes, they did get some Orinoracles. So
they're one of my favorites for
yeah,
sure.
So super cool. Yeah. Can't wait to see them in person.
Becky says, if anyone can do this expansion, it is you.
Well, thank you, Becky. I appreciate your support. And I'm going to need that support, not just from you, Becky, but from everybody.
For sure.
You know, moral support, any support, you know, like some of the people that have commented earlier, I'm going to lean on to help, you know, and my friends are going to need, you know, this is, again, it's a village, man. It's not going to be me that does this. It's going to be every single person. And sometimes, you know, something as simple as an uplifting message from somebody is going to be a lot for me. You know, like there's nothing is going to be too small to help this process.
That's right.
We're gonna need every person on all levels to chip in as much as they can.
Yeah.
Some will be financial, some will be hard work, some will just be inspirational and motivational for me. So yeah, it's going to be fun and it's going to be, you know, I know this sounds really cheesy, but I want you guys to feel like it's part of you too. You know,
because it is.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are going to see it, you know, and I want you guys to feel like you are a part of it, and that when you come here, you can go like, wow, I remember sending Brian that message on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I knew he was having a tough day, and look at now this, you know, when you come visit, you'll feel like it was yours, your ownership, you know. So it's going to be cool.
Dank J says, love you all. Be safe.
Thank you too, Jay.
Danky J. Greg's Reptile Studio says, hey, fam, I'm late, so I had to fast forward to ask if Elvis is getting a new closure in 3.0.
Yeah.
Also, Bri, podcast in question in your DMs. I'm going to be on a podcast next week, so I have a question. Good night, guys.
I'll check that out in the DMs for sure. I'm hoping it's Instagram DMs, because if it's any other DMs, I don't get them. I don't do any.
I would assume. I would hope so.
I don't do any other DMs. Yes, Elvis will get another cage, and I want to have a big water feature, much like Ivy's cage for Elvis. So yeah, he's definitely going to get a larger cage and more water feature for sure. I want him to be able to swim as much as he wants, and he's a very, very special animal to me.
That's right.
We'll have a few water monitors now. We're working on getting another one right now, a different one. I can't say much about it, but it's going to be coming in the next little bit. You guys will see it. Obviously, we have Toothless and we have Elvis, so we'll have 3, and I want all 3 of them to have really impressive enclosures that they can do. That's the thing. This expansion is going to be more about large, impressive, lots of water features. I don't know that there's going to be many enclosures that I build that are not going to have water features,
which
in
is
this
so
next
cool.
thing, because I love water features. I think it makes the difference between a amateur and a professional type of a zoophile. And so I think almost if not every one will be a water feature.
Heck yeah.
And big, impressive. I guess the tortoises won't be water feature, although they will have a water feature.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a water feature in with the tortoises. Yeah.
So everything.
Yeah.
JG says, how's a little Verde? Verde, can you do more videos with her?
Oh yeah, I should. Yeah, I should. She's doing really well.
We can do a cool video with her.
Yeah, we're doing. I feel bad that she gets left behind a little bit.
It's not forever. It's just now because she's smaller.
Yeah, she's still just not. Yeah, I mean, do people want to see a gigantic anaconda or a 4-footer?
And we also talk about this all the time. It's like, listen, if she's doing something cool, we film it, obviously. But and that's the same with all the animals. We don't just like go up to Ivy if she's just chilling. It's just that she's big, she grows a lot, so she sheds a lot or has to eat a lot or whatever, know? So it's more often we do that.
Yeah. But no, I agree. Still love Verde. She's
of
freaking
course.
awesome. And it's great with the Reptarian because, most people can't hold Ivy.
I was just going to say that.
But we can pull out Verde all the time.
Yeah, she's a rock star at the Reptarian.
She comes out every night, and she's great. She's fantastic, so it's really good.
And that's all I got, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, so trying to think if there's anything else to wrap up my thoughts on things. Again, just I appreciate, you guys' support on and I guess it goes back to what I was saying about inspiring people, is that this is crazy. I mean, really, when I think about this whole adventure, from the Reptarium to the expansion to the aquarium to the dig site to potentially penguins in the future, it's all mental. You know what I mean? It's like I'm some fucking guy from the south side of Warren that grew up in a lower middle class, single mom family until I was 8 years old. Didn't even have a car. I mean, my dad was not in the picture. My mom didn't even have a car until I was 8. You know what I mean? And I'm not like rich, I don't have $8 million sitting in the bank, for just sitting there to burn. The whole thing is crazy, you know what I mean? And it's crazy to go in front of a city council and have the mayor thank you for investing in their city and to be a part of their city. And it's crazy that I think that I can achieve this goal that seems completely ludicrous. But that's kind of the whole purpose, right? If you don't step out of your comfort zone and you don't do things that are outrageous and you don't do things that people think you can't do, you're not going to grow as a human. You're not going to grow as a person. And I'm not willing to accept anything less than spectacular in my life. When I had the anxiety, and I still do, it's not like it's gone, but when I was really bad anxiety wise, it's one of the things I told my therapist is that I won't settle for 90% better. I will only settle for 100% better. And that's kind of my take on life. It's like, I'm not settling for modesty. I'm not settling for, it was kind of cool. Listen, right now I could roll out this Reptarium the way it is. We're sold out this weekend, right? We're sold out last weekend. We're sold out most weekends, right? We're doing fine. This could probably go for the next 20 years, just like it is. Be really profitable, really successful. Continue just having amazing experiences here. I don't have to do anything, right? You know what I mean? It's like
the passion.
it's that, yeah. I mean, it's that you drive to do, you climb that next mountain.
Exactly.
You know,
That's a great way to put it.
And this is the next mountain for me, you know. And I don't know if there'll be a mountain after this or not. I can't.
There will.
I can't think. Yeah, there probably will.
There is.
There probably will. But right now, my focus is on one thing and one thing only, and it's to achieve this monumental task that seems ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it's almost, that's the thing, right? Is like you almost can't see that next peak until you reach the summit of this one.
Right,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you have to focus on it.
Yeah, and that's all. I'm laser focused on one thing, and I know I'm going to be laser focused on this one thing for the next 2 years of my life.
It's going to be rad.
But when I'm done with that, then I'll just my my modus operandi is that I don't get finished before I move on to the next
That's
thing.
right.
I usually I mean, look, I'm looking at trying to add penguins before I've even started with the first.
But it's just opportunities, man. That's how it works.
But let's say that the Reptarium expansion is done. Let's say the Utica dig site is done. Let's say the aquarium is done, and let's say the penguins do happen. Which is a maybe one of the craziest things I'm thinking right now. But let's say that happens, and we get penguins in the other building that's across the parking lot. What's next? I don't know. I can't even imagine what could possibly be next. That being said, I'm sure there'll be something that comes up that and that doesn't mean that I have other business acumen that I want to do that has nothing to do with the Reptarium or aquarium or any of that type of stuff. Things that I want to launch that are completely separate, that may happen during this period of time in my life or may not happen during this period of time in my life. I don't know. It's a timing issue. So it's not like I'm laser focused on this one thing here, but I also have some other things brewing in the back. And if the opportunities arise to take advantage of those opportunities, I will take advantage of them. But as far as like the next thing that I haven't even thought about yet, I don't know, man. I'm sure it'll come to me, but it's a long way off. But in the meantime, it's going to be a wild ride, guys. I can't wait to take you guys along on it. And I'm sorry if I bore you talking about it because I'm going to probably talk about it a lot for the next 2 years, and I hope that doesn't kill your guys' opinion of me. But yeah, that's about it. So are we done with
that's all I got, brother?
Well, guys,
they crushed it tonight, by the way, guys.
Yeah, you guys did so good on the supers. I appreciate all you guys' support. I appreciate everything, and just keep reaching for your dreams, guys. And I'm going to show you that. It's that anyone can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And I hope it inspires you guys. So thanks again for hanging out with me tonight. I will be back on Wednesday with the fam. And then next weekend, I think we have a guest. I can't remember exactly who it is yet, but we'll have, I think this is the last solo for the next maybe 5 or 6 weeks. So
sweet.
So I appreciate you guys. Love you. And we'll see you on the pod. I guess we'll see you on the vlog tomorrow.
Oh, we'll see you vlog tomorrow.
See the podcast next Wednesday, and we'll see you on the vlog in the morning. It's a banger, by the way. You guys are going to like it.
Later, guys.
Okay. So that was Brian Barczyk. R.I.P. So that's what I just listened to. We can do. I feel like they don't really stay on reptile topic as much. So I think this next one we're gonna do another animals at home. This is rewilding indigos and snake talk. I was looking for a very specific podcast this morning. I thought it was Snake Talk, but there's so many of them that are labeled that. So, yeah. Okay, then.
Many of your listeners probably know, but gopher tortoises dig a burrow, and that burrow is used by over 350 other species. Those are insects, birds, mammals, reptiles. And indigo snakes in the northern portion of their range, they use gopher tortoise burrows to survive the winters. And so,
what is your best snake story?
Okay. The real disturbing thing from my perspective and from most people's perspective down here is the way they
still
caught
doesn't
them.
reach.
And so what they do is
No.
they'd run a garden hose down into gopher tortoise burrows, and then they would put gasoline.
Welcome to episode number 83 of the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dylan Perrin. Thank you very much for joining me today. As always, if you're looking for more information on the show, make sure you head to animalsathomenetwork.com. There you'll find all the show notes for each episode that has been produced. This podcast is entirely supported by its listeners. If you're looking to show your support, you can do a couple of different things. First, you could head to the Apple podcasting app and give the podcast a 5-star rating. You can share the content on social media, either Facebook or Instagram. You can join us on Patreon at patreon.com/animalsathome. There you'll have access to behind the scenes content as well as early access to episodes. And finally, you can visit the show's sponsor, customreptilehabitats.com. There is an affiliate link in both the YouTube description as well as the show notes. If you use that link, a small commission does come back to me at no extra cost to you. And of course, that helps me produce the show. Okay, we're going to jump right into this episode. And before we do, I'll tell you, I'm actually filming a behind the scenes episode video for YouTube to show you guys how I go about producing the podcast. And it is going to be on this episode that you're listening to right now. So I'm in the process of kind of, producing this podcast episode as well as making a video to show how I did it. So once this episode is out, give me a few days, maybe 3 or 4 days after this episode has been released, and there should be a video on YouTube showing you how I make the podcast. Joining me on the podcast today is Dr. Chris Jenkins, who is the CEO of the Orion Society, as well as the host of the podcast Snake Talk. We really covered a lot of ground in this episode, starting from how Chris got into reptiles, how he discovered he wanted to pursue a career in wildlife conservation and wildlife biology. We discussed the Orion Society, how it got its name, as well as what kind of work the Orion Society does, as well as discussed one of its flagship species, which is the eastern indigo snake, which I think most listeners will agree is one of the most fascinating snakes there is, especially in North America. We discussed just the idea of conservation and what it means to protect snakes, as far as, how to change the public perspective of them. It's, one of those species or one of those animals that most people are afraid of. So that poses some conservation challenges. We discussed that. Of course, we discuss his podcast, Snake Talk, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite podcasts out there. It is really amazing. So I hope all of you, after listening to this episode, go check out Snake Talk as well. And we wrap up the podcast with Dr. Jenkins' best snake story, which is something that he does on his podcast. And I had to bring it into this show as well. So let's just jump into the episode. I do really hope you enjoy it. Here is my conversation with Dr. Chris Jenkins. Cool. Well, Dr. Jenkins, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm a big fan of the podcast. I'm absolutely happy to have you on. I've been binging it the last few days and just really, really enjoying it. Your podcast kind of reminds me of mine in a way where you have lots of diversity of content. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But just like you do on your show, I like to lay a bit of a foundation first to understand the guest. So as far as you are you an animal person first, or did you gravitate towards snakes and reptiles first?
Well, so I grew up in rural New England, up in the northeastern part of the U.S., and grew up a pretty outdoors type of lifestyle. And I was really interested in all animals. I grew up in a family that did a lot of hunting and fishing and camping. I always loved going outside looking for frogs and salamanders, but the truth is, a lot of people are actually kind of surprised at this. But as a child, I actually had a pretty significant fear of snakes, like a real phobia. You hear a lot of people these days have, and part of the reason I developed the podcast and my whole career is to help other people with that issue.
Interesting. So then, when did the fascination with snakes come in? How did that start?
Well, I think I've always been fascinated with them. I had a few kind of punctuated events in my childhood where I remember, for example, one time swimming in kind of a mountain creek. We had a northern water snake, and it kind of terrified me, or a garter snake I saw in my backyard. But now looking back on those, it was, there. Just really intense fascination, and that's what drove me towards it. And I sensed that probably as I was getting through high school or very early in college, and right about that time I kind of realized that it wasn't just fear, that these animals were just so interesting and fascinating to me that I forced myself to get over that fear. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk about that later too. That sort of innate fear that many humans have to snakes, and a lot of times it is justified. But I keep snakes as well, and we were talking about before we started recording, and people will come over and they will be fearful of them, but the same draw. They want to look at them, they want to see them. They're kind of poking their head into the reptile room. So you have that. There is that deep-seated fear, but there's that fascination that draws you to them as well. So they are sort of a mythical being in a lot of ways. So it sort of makes sense that you understood that fear was actually maybe fascination. But then you sort of take it one step further, because then you really focus on vipers, which is, there is a credible danger with vipers, and they are even another layer of fascination probably. So how did that start?
Well, so I've always been very interested in my whole life. I've always been really interested in adventure and kind of things that would really, kind of build up adrenaline, So, for example, just take in the mammal world. I was always interested in things like grizzly bears and wolves, kind of big predators. I think the interest in vipers that I've had, since I started getting into snakes and I continue to have now, I think it's kind of comes from that. Or also, to me, they're really just kind of fascinating animals. But to be real straightforward, it gives me a little bit of a charge handling a rattlesnake, seeing a rattlesnake in the wild. They're just, they're probably one of my favorite animals on the planet. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then, as you were saying, you were getting into late high school, into college, and you were transitioning from a fear to a fascination. At that point, were you well aware that you were going to pursue a degree in biology or a career in biology?
Well, I started my undergrad. I also had this is another thing not a lot of people know, but my original major in college was art history. I've always been really into art. I'm not an artist, but what I originally wanted to do was get a job, say, working in art restoration, working in a museum or something like that, and kind of fixing paintings, picture framing, those types of things. And so I was studying art and the history of art for a couple of years, and then I had to take a gen ed. And when I took the gen ed, a science gen ed, I picked a wildlife biology course. And once I took that, it brought me back to this rural childhood, being in the woods, seeing animals, and I just dove all in with wildlife. However, I will say that the snake part, about that same time, I was kind of building that interest in snakes, and I one thing I did to kind of force myself over that fear was I bought a pet snake. I bought a red-tailed boa, and and I started going out in the woods looking for them, and I just, I still had, there was this strange fear, even just handling my boa initially, but I just really forced myself to get over it because I was so fascinated by these animals, and I really love other animals. I love bears, for example. And I thought, that there was a chance I might become a bear biologist. But reptiles and amphibians, the whole group, not just snakes, they always fascinated me because it seemed like their biology, that just the details were so interesting. Frogs that carry eggs on their backs, and snakes that swallow eggs, and all these adaptations to do interesting things. So it was those kind of like the minute details of reptile and amphibian biology that just drove me there from a career perspective. I still love bears and all these other animals today, and I go out in the woods and I watch bears and other animals do what they do. But it was that kind of those details, the interesting details of their biology that drove me to snakes.
Yeah, there is this sort of wealth of just diversity as far as reptiles and amphibians go, not only just appearance, but where they live and how they live, and in a lot of ways it's still the academic literature is still quite empty on reptiles when you compare that to something like mammals, or if you go as far up to like primates, for example. They have this giant stack of literature where reptiles is much lower, so there's still so much to learn, and I can understand or sort of relate to being fascinated by them. And then Does conservation or the concept of wildlife conservation just sort of automatically get folded into that when you start studying reptiles, or did you get that added into your sort of philosophy somewhere else?
I don't think it has to be. I mean, I know many herpetologists who are just interested in real, say, some basic aspect of their biology that doesn't have an application, say. But for me, growing up and spending so much time in the woods, I was interested in the biology of the animals, but I also cared about these animals deeply. I cared about the experiences that I was having with them in the wild, and I wanted to make sure that they were there for future generations. So I'd say for me personally, it was there right from the beginning.
Hmm.
But I certainly know a lot of herpetologists that that's not the case, and I think that's just fine because there's lot of a lot of biology we need to know in a general sense, or for medical reasons, or whatever it might be. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, right from the beginning, there's always been that applied connection to the ground and to making sure these animals are here in the future.
So as far as a general sort of day-to-day day in the life of your job, because wildlife biology is one of those jobs that kids dream to become, especially if you're an animal lover. You have the vet, the zoologist, and a zookeeper. There's a few sort of handful, and obviously being a wildlife researcher or biologist is one of them. So just I'm sure this is way too broad of a question, but can you just lay out what you do on a daily basis or on sort of a monthly basis? What is it like to be a wildlife biologist that studies snakes?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that these days, I mean, I'm the CEO of a nonprofit. So essentially, I run a company, and the company is focused on research and conservation of reptiles and amphibians. And I still do some of that. But me personally, I'm not out every day doing biology work. Again, I do some of that, but my days are very, very diverse. So, I have biologists that work for me. Some of them are herpetologists that might be out studying a snake or a turtle or a frog. And I'm interacting with them and working on, say, proposals, going out in the field to visit their projects, working on writing papers together, doing those types of things. I do have field projects that I focus on, almost like a pet project, if you will. And that's primarily focused around vipers, and then specifically because of where I live, focused around timber rattlesnakes. So in the summer, I do spend a fair amount of time out in the field myself doing surveys. But then I have a lot of other parts to my job where, I have a finance or an accounting department, and I'm meeting with them, and I'm working through annual audits and financial reports. I have a fundraising department, and a huge part of what I do is fundraising. I have just administrative people, communication people. So I really run a company. I do try to keep my my hand or my feet in that world of doing some of the biology, but I certainly run a company these days.
Mhm. So let's talk a little bit about the Orient Society. This is a company that you founded. And so first, before you kind of tell us what it is, I'd love to know about the name, how you came up with the name Orient Society.
Yeah, so the name Oriane, the word, it's the name of a young girl, and I had finished my PhD at Idaho State University. I worked on Great Basin rattlesnake ecology there. I finished that, and I was working with Wildlife Conservation Society, best known as the Bronx Zoo, um, but WCS, as it's called, works all around the world on conservation projects with wildlife. And I was based in their Yellowstone ecosystem program. I was still living in Idaho where I did my PhD, and I was working on a whole variety of species and ecology, applied ecology, conservation biology issues. So I was doing that, and I had begun to work with the folks in New York City to develop a global snake program where my role would kind of shift from a geographic focus in Yellowstone to one a taxonomic focus, where we'd develop a snake program, we'd integrate snake research and conservation projects kind of around the world in the different landscapes that WCS worked in. And I was working on that, and as part of that, I was working with a number of philanthropists or donors And one of them happened to have a real interest in indigo snakes. And to make a long story short, we ended up creating this new organization. Dr. Kaplan is his name, and he wanted to pull the project out of WCS and create a new organization. So we created the Orianne Society, and we created it in his daughter's name. So Orianne is the name of a young girl. And the reason we created it in her name was, when she was a young child, she had the opportunity, she was down in Florida, and I think she was doing kind of a behind the scenes tour in a zoo, and had the opportunity to hold an Eastern indigo snake. And her father at the time was already doing a lot of conservation work for tigers in particular. And she was holding the snake, and she basically asked her father if he could do for indigo snakes what he was doing for tigers. And so that's what prompted the creation of the Orianne Society. We were created originally as an organization that's focused on conservation of Eastern indigo snakes. That was 12 years ago, and the organization has really broadened its scope, and we work on a number of different species, both here in the US and beyond. But indigo snakes certainly remain a real central part of our programs and what we do. Actually, the property I'm sitting on today is one of our preserves that we purchased for the preservation of indigo snakes.
Fascinating. I figured there was some interesting story behind that, because when I Googled Orianne, I wasn't sure if it was a word, and then the same sort of thing, it came up as a name. So I thought there must be something associated with that. So yeah, that's really interesting. So you were saying it kind of started as the focus on the indigos, and now it's kind of broadened a little bit. And I know maybe you could just speak about broadly what the Orianne Society is doing now. I know on the website you have these 3 different initiatives, sort of looking at 3 different environmental niches, and so in general, now that you've broadened beyond the Eastern indigo, what sort of things are you guys doing?
Well, so I think you're talking about the 3 landscapes that we've been developing programs in here in the U.S. And really, one of them actually leads over into Canada a little bit, but really we have 3 broad initiatives. We have a science initiative, conservation initiative, and a communications initiative. And our science initiative is we're building a relationship with Virginia Tech University, and I have my director of science is based at the university. And this is an initiative that does scientific research on reptiles and amphibians. They do things like spatial modeling that we can use to say predict where the most important habitats are for an animal, those types of things. Again, they're based in Virginia, but work across all the landscapes that we work in and beyond. And then our conservation initiative, I should say, is very place-based, and that's where I think you're getting these 3 landscape place-based projects. One is called Longleaf Savannas, which is built out of our history with indigo snakes, and it's focused on the longleaf pine ecosystem in the southeastern coastal plain. And we do a lot of work down there on everything from indigo snakes, gopher tortoises, pine snakes, southern hognose snakes. We do a lot of habitat restoration, a lot of land conservation in particular for those animals. We work very directly with them on research projects, inventory and monitoring, but a lot of what we're doing now in the longleaf savannas is very habitat focused. A lot of fire, a lot of prescribed fire, those types of things. We also have a program called Great Northern Forests, and this would be up kind of where the boreal forests and the northern hardwood forests come together in the Northeast. So you could think of places like the Adirondacks in New York, through places like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, southern Quebec. Most of our work to date has been focused in Vermont. We have our small office there. And, we're really up there. We're focused at this point primarily on riparian habitats, and we're really focused on a turtle that lives in rivers, so the wood turtle. And so we're doing a lot of research and inventory monitoring, and then also, again, a lot of kind of riparian habitat restoration. And then finally, we have an Appalachian Highlands initiative, which is kind of like a Southern Appalachian initiative. We've also been doing a lot of riparian and wetland restoration for things like bog turtles and hellbenders, and we're doing a lot of work with timber rattlesnakes. And then I won't go into depth, but we do have international programs as well. We've been working on vipers in various parts of the world, and more recently, we've partnered up to help create a new organization on giant tortoises and rewilding giant tortoises throughout the Seychelles. So this is the Aldabra tortoise. And so that's an exciting project. The organization is called the Indian Ocean Tortoise Alliance, and that is just getting off the ground, and Orianne's been very involved in that. But I will say the last thing I'll mention, our final leg of the stool, is our communications program. And every company, for-profit, nonprofit, has a communications program. But we're really trying to rethink communications. We're not just thinking about it like marketing to help our business and raise money. I mean, hopefully that happens too. But we're really trying to think about communications as in a programmatic way, and in particular because of the animals we work on and some of the things you talked about as an example. A lot of the animals that we work on are some of the most feared, maligned animals on the planet. And so one of the greatest things we can do is increase public's knowledge of these animals and try to give these animals just shed some light on, again, things like how fascinating their biology is, how, those types of things. So our community, we're kind of reconfiguring our communications to really focus in a programmatic way to try to change how a lot of people think about these animals. And we're also, along those same lines, we're trying to be we want to be very cutting edge, if you will. And I'm a bit of a dinosaur these days, but I know I'm a dinosaur, and so I hire people who are not.
That's the first step.
And I just realized that, I love to go and talk to scout groups and bring snakes and do all these very in-person types of things. I mean, we'll still do some of that, but we are really focusing on, being with the times and being with technology and trying to be one of the leaders in that space and using that to change the future for reptiles and amphibians. So you mentioned the podcast, videography, and, obviously social media, and all of these pieces that are kind of digital and remote. We're really working every day to try to innovate there in the reptile and amphibian space.
Well, I want to linger on that communication spot for a little bit, because I think that's what makes, an organization like yourself very fascinating, because you are, like we've talked about, we're dealing with animals that it's not intuitive to the mainstream public why I should even care about them. Like, why shouldn't I run, hit the snake over the head with a shovel type thing? As reptile lovers, we can't understand that. But, from the mainstream public, it's sort of the innate response. So, you're talking about how you can start tackling those issues. But before, where do you think, maybe you've spent some time thinking about this innate fear? Is this an evolutionary fear, or what's going on here? Or is it just because they're so far removed from humans? Or what do you think is that sort of driving force that makes people fearful of these animals sort of without understanding them?
Well, I think there's both. Genetic and behavioral or environmental. So we as humans or primates there are snakes in our past that would eat us, and the form of a snake is a fairly distinct form, and so and there are studies where you have naive primates that have naive in that they've never interacted with a snake, and they do display, certain behavioral responses to those snakes that indicate they know that this is something that they should potentially be careful around. So I do think some of it's genetic, but I really think that by far the bulk of it is environmental or behavioral or taught, and that's the component that we're working on, because you see it every, it's all around you. It's, you see it. I do a lot of school events, again, whether it's a scout group or just going to, school. And, I put snakes and turtles and other animals into kids' hands. And, you might see an event where you say, put a snake into a kid's hand, and they're just fascinated and they're holding it and excited, and their mother comes running over. It's like, oh my God, put that down, and starts screaming. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but it's an example that happens. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners, probably have had similar experiences if they're keeping snakes and showing them publicly. And so anyways, I do think a lot of this is learned and it's passed down through generations, and misconceptions that are passed on. And that's, knowledge, increasing people's knowledge of these animals, and just simply, one of the phrases I use in the podcast, snakes are animals too. I just want people, you don't have to love a snake, but, I want people to at least think of it like a robin. You don't go out and shoot every robin in your yard just because they're there. And snakes should be the same way. You don't have to love them like a lot of people do. You don't have to want them as pets or whatever it might be, but they are animals too, and they're important in a lot of ways. And, so anyways, that behavioral piece, that the non-genetic piece is the part that we're trying to work on and increase knowledge. Because I think knowledge, once people realize, some things about these animals, they can really, I don't know if they relate to them, but it just changes very quickly, their perspective. So.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, anybody that owns snakes will have those experiences with people when they, like I was saying earlier, you have fearful people that come over and then they'll look at them, and eventually maybe after a few weeks they might hold or touch a snake. And it's exactly what you're saying. There's that switch that gets flicked from it being a creepy, scary thing to just kind of being more fascinating. And like you said, they don't have to love them. They don't have to want to keep them or hold them, but just to not want to run it over is a big step. And, it is interesting though, because when listening to your show, you have lots of biologists and conservationists on that are talking about this same sort of concept, but in other parts of the world where, to say snakes aren't dangerous would actually be a lie in some of these places, right? There are actual dangers associated with either venomous snakes, or even sometimes you had that episode that was about pythons, and, nobody was getting killed by a python, but there were still people, getting constricted by them, or their leg getting constricted. So there is that kind of dichotomy between our side of the world where we do have medical resources to handle these things. And really at the end of the day, if you just don't touch a snake, you should be fine. But then on the other part of the world, there are some actual dangers. And then, there's some challenges there with educating the people, because, it's probably harder to tell them to not just kill the snake when they've seen people in their town die and whatnot. So I don't know if the Orient Society deals with any of that communication on that part of the world, or do you have any sort of thoughts on that?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that, yes, obviously, I work a lot with venomous snakes, and they can kill you depending on the species, and they can make you very sick. So I guess I'm not trying to say that there are no dangers with snakes. And then like you were saying, you start going to other parts of the world where maybe you have snake species that have even more toxicity to their venom, and you have just social situations, whatever, healthcare, whatever it might be, that it just is nowhere near to the level it is here in North America, and and there are real problems. But I do think so. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not, if there's some village in some part of rural Africa and people are dying from these snakes, I'm not trying to say people should tolerate them in their backyards. But I do think part of the solution to that is to not just kill all of those. It's also to do, I think you're referencing the Snakebite Foundation podcast. And what they're doing is the whole goal of that nonprofit, and your listeners should check it out, is they go into these rural, underserved, if you will, areas from a healthcare perspective, and they build snakebite clinics so they can help the people, deal with this issue. And so that's part of it, part of the answer to that, the answer to that equation where, we need to work on some of those systems that can be in place. But yeah, I mean, certainly there are places where snakes are a real problem, but it's also, people need to have a perspective on it. Like if you look here in North America, for example, your chances of getting killed by a horse in a given year are much greater than your chances of getting killed by a snake. Even bees, obviously, because of allergies. But I mean, people need to keep this in perspective. I've given a lot of talks where, say, I drive down to, say, South Carolina from where I live in Georgia, and I'm presenting to a group of a couple hundred people, and I've got venomous snakes out, and I'm handling them, and I'm talking about them, and people see it as such a fantastic thing. He's handling these they see deadly animals, and I tell them, like, oh, you just saw me handle that 6-foot eastern diamondback rattlesnake, and now here I've got this coral snake, whatever it might be, and you're watching this and you're seeing how I interact with these animals, and you're probably thinking I'm crazy, but I'll tell you, by far the most dangerous thing I did today was drive here. So I just think it's important. These things are dangerous. They can make you very sick, but it is important for people to keep it in perspective. There are certain things that are kind of, I'll call them horrific. Same thing with, like, say, a great white shark attack. Mm-hmm. It's a horrific event. It's something that stands out in somebody's mind. That would be the same thing for a venomous snake bite, but the chances of those happening are actually quite low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's so true. And like you said, at the end of the day, it is just about educating. So it almost doesn't matter what part of the world you're in, what the resources are. And that snake bite episode, or the African Snake Bite Institute, it wasn't called Institute. That's a different program. But the African Snake Bite episode that you did is a perfect example of, just teaching those communities and helping them understand, and, teaching them the anti-venom, these communities. Like you said, I encourage everybody to go check that episode out, because you realize that a lot of these places are set up for failure dealing with venomous snakes, and it really just takes resetting the foundation and giving them the proper supplies and education. And then, like you said, yeah, they probably don't feel the need to kill everything, and they can sort of learn to coexist. And it's fascinating. I wanted to focus a little bit on Eastern indigos, because they are sort of the mascot of Orient society, and you sort of mentioned where they came from, or where the focus came from. What is your relationship with that species?
Well, so, I mean, again, they're one of a mascot's almost a good way to put it. They are definitely an ambassador for reptile and snake conservation. They're an incredible animal, largest, at least longest native snake in North America. We call them Emperor of the Forest, because that's what their Latin name loosely translates into. And that gets to the point that they're like a predator of predators, meaning over half of their diet, or about half of their diet's other snakes. So just this incredible predatory animal that's covering incredible distances, largest known home range of any native snake, again, in North America. Really incredible animal. Again, kind of a flagship. That's probably a better word than a mascot, but real flagship for our organization. And it's a species that we work very closely with. We do everything from a lot of habitat restoration work. We inventory and monitor populations. We have reintroduction programs for them. We, I have indigo snakes in my office, while we're talking about keeping animals in captivity. I keep them. And so I have a very intimate connection to some of these snakes on a daily basis. So really, truly an amazing animal. And, it's not everything we do now, but it, again, certainly is the flagship, and it's an important part of our history. And it's an important issue that people should really care about. They're a snake that needs our help. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're almost at that mythological level in a way, because they have, Emperor of the Forest is such a great name, and they're beautiful, and like you said, they're snake eaters, and they're just a fascinating species. And I know that you had mentioned that there's some rewilding efforts with that species, and you'd also touched on it with the giant tortoises in the Seychelles. So maybe we could focus on the indigos for a second. How How are those projects going? So are those captive bred animals and then they're being released kind of into their native range or where their native range should be? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because that's sort of one area where many people think rewilding is not possible and a lot of these animals will die in their first year type thing. So maybe you could just sort of lay out the work that you guys have done in that domain.
Yeah, so first of all, eastern indigo snakes have really declined for the most part across their range. And their range is historically would be Florida, South Georgia, uh, extreme southern Alabama, and just a little bit into Mississippi. They're gone from, well, they were gone from Alabama. I'll talk about that. They're gone from Mississippi, and they've declined in all of their range, really. But that Gulf part of their range, so like the Panhandle of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, they're completely gone. If not, there may have been one or two here or there, but they were functionally gone. I think the last indigo snake found in the wild was in the 1990s. And so we work with a really broad group of partners, state agencies, federal agencies, zoos, universities, on a reintroduction program. That reintroduction program is part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recovery plan for the snake. So this is a species that is federally listed under our Endangered Species Act. And as part of that, all those species have a recovery plan. It's essentially a roadmap that the government puts together that says, these are the things we need to do to recover the species. And one of them, again, is to establish through reintroductions a certain number of populations in that Gulf region. So we built a captive breeding center. It's a state-of-the-art animal facility. It's down in Florida, not too far from Orlando. And we partner with Central Florida Zoo. So we own the facility, but they primarily run it. And then we have a reintroduction committee that kind of works on strategies for breeding and head starting the captive bred individuals, and then the reintroductions themselves. And then we're reintroducing them back into the wild. We currently have two sites, one of those in Alabama and one of those in Florida. And to date, we've released, I can't remember the exact number, over 200 indigo snakes over the last, say, 8 or 9 years. So yeah, it's an exciting project, and it's probably, the other big captive breeding reintroduction program for snakes that's kind of at scale would be the Louisiana pine snake. But indigo snake project and the pine snake are probably the two biggest, snake rewilding projects in existence.
So what was the reason for the decline? Is it habitat loss, or are there other factors at play?
It's a combination of things, really. Some species that get really rare are simple. Like if you take our Endangered Species Act, you could take like American alligators that were, really rare. They were listed. That was a very simple thing. Like it was primarily just that we were killing them all. And so when we stopped killing them, they came back, and they're a common animal now. Our bald eagles, or say like peregrine falcons. We were using DDT, and that was, affecting the eggs. We stopped doing that. Those are simple problems to solve. An indigo snake and many endangered species are what I would classify as complex. So it's many things, but it links back to probably some of the biggest would be habitat, meaning that in particular, there's a lot of habitat loss and fragmentation. The longleaf pine ecosystem is down to like, at one point it was down to like less than 1%, of what it used to be historically. And as part of that, gopher tortoises have declined or disappeared in certain places. And that Gulf region is one of those areas where gopher tortoises have really declined. And many of your listeners probably know, but gopher tortoises dig a burrow. And that burrow is used by over 350 other species. Those are insects, birds, mammals, reptiles. And indigo snakes in the northern portion of their range, they use gopher tortoise burrows to survive the winters. And so that decline of gopher tortoises probably had a huge impact. The other probably big impact is that indigo snakes as a top predator.
That's not what I
And,
wanted.
I've already mentioned they have this really large home range. They move much more than other snake species. As top predators, they're crossing roads and they're just moving through this fragmented landscape that probably ends up, resulting in a number of them dying. Complex, I could go on. There's multiple factors, but a lot of them really do relate back to habitat. Gopher tortoises, which create habitat for them, and their need to have kind of big, coarse landscapes that they can operate on.
Okay,
so
yeah.
A lot of it kind of leads back to that.
So then, as far as the ones that you've released, is there a way to track those individuals? Are they being tracked, or is it sort of a hope that they will start reestablishing, or is there any way to see if that project is, going to be successful?
Yeah, so I will say that's been one of the very difficult parts of the project for us, is monitoring success. And that has to do with snakes in general being some of the hardest vertebrates on the planet to study. And that's not just in reintroduction programs, but they're just hard animals to study. Oftentimes species, you rarely see them. They're very hard to catch, even find to catch. So that has been an issue, but we do radio telemetry with them. So we track them around the landscapes. The first couple of years they're released, we mark all the animals, and then we do surveys to try to recapture them. But I will say we have great signs that there are success, but they're almost like anecdotal just because of the nature of the animal we're working with. We just cannot monitor them close enough to truly determine how successful they are. But I will say, again, there are multiple signs. So one important one was that, literally so we released the first release of snakes in Alabama, say 8-9 years ago. We had a graduate student who was radio tracking these snakes, and that was their thesis project. They were going to study the ecology of these reintroduced animals. And so he goes out and he tracks down the first snake. He comes up on the snake, and it's got a copperhead halfway down its throat. So it's those types of signs. But there are other important signs in that we have found released females that have been gravid. Last year, I guess it's going on a year and a half, 2 years ago now, we found our first neonate indigo snake that was born to, parents that were part of the reintroduction program, we have to assume. And so there are signs like that, and we're trying to work on a reliable monitoring strategy. But again, we do have some signs that there is some level of success.
Well, I would say those are some pretty amazing anecdotal signs, and I'm sure that it's probably the type of thing that you need a lot of time to go by before empirical evidence becomes easy to grasp, right? It's just like you can only look at those anecdotal things for the first maybe decade and a half, who knows? And so as far as the animals, when they're captive bred, is there anything being done at that facility to set those animals up for success when they're released? Like you're saying, the one has, you found it with a copperhead in its mouth. That's a great green check mark there. I'm sure, or maybe they were being fed copperheads in captivity. Is there any things that they were doing to make sure they could have success in the wild?
Yeah, so the animals at the breeding facility, they're bred there. And then the young snakes go off to other facilities, like U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service facilities, to zoos, Zoo Atlanta, for example, and they head start them for a period of time before release. So, there's one thing we do. We head start them. We get them to a certain size to help them escape some predation. But there's a trade-off there, right? The longer you keep an animal in captivity, you might assume the harder time it's going to have when it's released into the wild. And so you mentioned diet. They primarily are fed at the breeding center, at the various facilities. They're fed things that you can get in bulk, rodents, obviously, quail, things like that. But before they're released into the wild, they go through a multi-week period where we start feeding them the types of foods that they're going to get in the wild. Some kind of like mass-produced snakes, that are almost like quail or rodents, say like corn snakes or something like that. And then also some wild prey that we catch, everything frogs and whatever it might be, but a diversity. We start to shift their diet towards the end. We also want them to start to build up, a parasite load with wild animals, because indigos are famous in the wild for having high parasite loads. And so, and you might expect that as a top predator. So, we're trying to do a number of things there. But with the diet, we do try to condition them somewhat prior to release, shift their diet so they kind of get a taste, if you will, for all of these other things.
Well, that is very encouraging, and I remember you had that. I think the first episode of your podcast was about the indigo, and of course, I know about the indigo snake. You see it; it's not something that's super common in the reptile trade because it's more of a rare animal. But just learning about how peculiar that animal is, and the strength in its jaw and how it kills its prey is just fascinating.
Yeah, they're amazing snake. That's for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about Snake Talk. So I think you sort of mentioned why you started. Maybe you could just quickly give the origin stories for it, and then I have a few little topics that I want to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to podcasts all the time on a variety of topics that I'm interested in. And, I'm to the point where I rarely even listen to music anymore. I just listen to podcasts. And so start with that. And then, I started looking around and there really aren't a lot of reptile and amphibian podcasts out there. And certainly from this kind of like field perspective, like, there's a couple of field herping ones, or some similar to yours, captive husbandry, but from like a field ecology, conservation biology, there wasn't much in that space. And then given my career and my career history, and I've worked with university professors from all over the world and conservation biologists all over the world and federal agencies, I started thinking about all the people, all my colleagues that I'd worked with. And I just thought, well, I could put together quite a podcast that had, leading people in all of these different fields, and put together something that would be a real contribution and something that would hopefully attract some people. Hopefully there are people who listen to every episode, but I'm also really hoping to attract people who just might listen to one or two because they're interested in a topic. Again, trying to get to playing on that fascination people have with these animals, fascination that they think is fear. And so yeah, I don't know if I can't remember if I answered your question correctly, but that's kind of the origin. It just kind of hit me one day that I needed to do it.
Yeah, and I'm so happy you did, because it's an excellent show. I will encourage everybody to go check it out. And like I said at the beginning, I like it because it's not just one topic. It's you sort of have a very wide diversity. So every episode can be something completely different. And like you said, there wasn't that. I think you filled a niche perfectly. And personally, I think podcasting is still somehow in its infancy, even though it's been around for a decade or so. It's still, especially as someone who produces a podcast, I still very much feel there is a huge portion of the population that doesn't listen to podcasts at all, and they ought to, and I think they will. It's just going to be a little bit of time before that. So I think getting in now is great. So I don't know if you feel that as well, but I talk to people all the time. They're like, I don't listen to podcasts, and I'm just like you. I don't listen to the radio. I don't really listen to music. There's going to be a podcast on my phone. As soon as I get in my car, it's going to start playing.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the exact same way, and I agree with you. I think there's still a lot of places, a lot of growth to be had in terms of audience, and then also in terms of content that can be put out there. I mean, there are some spaces that are really, there's just a lot of podcasts, but there are a lot of places that, people could get into the game and really fill some open niches. So, yeah, I think it's great.
I'll just list a couple of episodes for listeners that I just listened to recently, and then I have a question about some conservation topics about them. But I listened to the great episode that you did with, I'm forgetting his name, but he was a python biologist in Australia. What was his name? It started with a D.
His last name is Natusha. Trying to remember his name. I should know this. He's the chairman of the IUCN
Yes.
Boa and Python group.
Mhm.
I think he pronounces his last name Natush. I have to look it up. But,
Yeah, well, I want to show all that in the
anyways,
show notes.
go ahead.
Yeah. So that was a great episode. And then I just listened to one yesterday with the serpent handling, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm sure everybody is familiar with it. They might not realize it. That's those churches in the South that, handle venomous snakes and rattlesnakes and whatnot as part of their worship. And that was such a bizarre episode and a mind-blowing episode. So, and that's something I would never have thought about even talking about on the podcast. So how did you come up with that?
I want it to be about snakes, and I want to, certainly there's going to be, you'll see throughout it that there are a number of people kind of like me, if you will, academic type research biologists who, are focused on conservation biology. There's a lot of that sprinkled in, but then I always wanted to mix it up, and I wanted to, we have episodes like you talked about with snake handling. It's a topic, again, I'm trying to get not just snake fanatics to listen to this podcast. The whole point, again, is programmatic from my perspective. I want to get people who would never listen to a podcast on African snakes that just talks about the different species, but I want to draw them in with some things like that, provide some good information for them and some knowledge, and hopefully they take that away and think about that next time they see a snake in the wild. So that's part of it. And, but the scope of the podcast really covers anything within snakes. So every once in a while, we did one on The Walking Dead. For example, a woman I know is like a snake handler for The Walking Dead that goes in and basically moves snakes before they film and then puts them back. Or, we have some other interesting ones along. We did one with a guy I know in fly fishing and snakes. So, we're going to do some of that, like gardening and snakes. Like if your big hobby is gardening, and what's kind of the intersection there with snakes. We've done some on husbandry, mostly from a kind of a reintroduction perspective, but I want to do some on captive husbandry more from like a recreational perspective. So there's gonna be a lot of different topics, but I do try to mix it up to to just kind of garner a broad interest.
Yeah, and you do a great job of that. And one of the areas that gets touched on a lot is just conservation in general. And I really appreciate and this is just sort of as a result of yourself, your expertise, as well as the people you have on, but the mature approach that comes to conservation. Because I think as somebody who's outside of the academic world like myself and, just sort of deal with mainstream conservation, a lot of times we're only exposed to sort of the hysterical activist who just wants to cancel everything that makes them uncomfortable, and they don't ever look into anything deeper than just on the surface. And a great example, and maybe I'll get you to just briefly touch on this, is the skin trade. And especially as reptile keepers, most of us see that as quite distasteful. We don't understand why that would be the case, but when you actually look at underneath the surface, there's actually some positives to the skin trade, and it's not as nefarious as many of us think. And just to cancel it completely would actually negatively impact a whole bunch of people. So maybe you could just briefly, if you remember kind of off of those episodes, what are, using the skin trade as an example, is why it's not always black and white.
Yeah, it is interesting. And then we really had two episodes that kind of touched on this. The first one was with Craig Hoover, who worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, had very high-level positions working on wildlife trade. And he talked about the same thing. Obviously, the skin trade can be bad for certain people, but there can be positives as well. And also the episode you referenced earlier, I believe you pronounce his name Natush, Dan Natush, and he was talking about some of the same things, but some of these species are just very, some of these pythons, for example, or some of these colubrids are very common animals, and the skin trade is really not impacting them that much. But again, it's kind of this push button item that people could immediately, if you're into snakes, kind of have this pushback against. But some of that's unwarranted for sure. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I think from yourself, I think I heard this on an episode that you've done some work in sort of redirecting some of the rattlesnake roundups in the States. That's right?
Correct. So here in the Southeast, there were 3 remaining when I moved to the Southeast, and now there are 2.
Could you quickly just sort of lay out what those are? I think most people will be familiar with it, but especially if people in Europe might not totally be aware of what those are.
Yeah, I mean, a rattlesnake roundup is essentially a festival built around rattlesnakes, and we have them in the southwestern U.S. and the southeastern U.S., and they're much different in the 2 regions. Here in the Southeast, what would happen historically is people would go out and they would catch hundreds or thousands of rattlesnakes. Oftentimes they're mostly eastern diamondbacks, some timber or canebrake rattlesnakes. And it's a festival built around that, with everything you might think of: kids buying cotton candy and going on rides and doing all these things. But there's usually a central area where snakes are kept in really large containment areas, fenced in areas. There are presentations on snakes. The snakes are handled. So it's a festival built around snakes. And why it's so bad here in the Southeast is because what happened historically is all these snakes were captured, and then after the event, those snakes were then purchased by, again, a skin dealer, and they would kill all the snakes, which was an impact, certainly. I don't want to minimize that, but it was certainly an impact, having very localized impacts on snake populations. But the real disturbing thing from my perspective, and from most people's perspective down here, is the way they caught them. And so what they do is they'd run a garden hose down into gopher tortoise burrows, and then they would put gasoline into that hose. And there have been a number of studies, or a study at least, that showed this is killing a lot more than just running a snake out of the burrow. It's killing things like potentially gopher tortoises, things like indigo snakes. So there were a lot of these real indirect impacts. And so what we did to change the largest one in the Southeast was we turned it into a wildlife festival. So the public has no different experience now. The only difference is that the snakes aren't caught in the wild. So you're not having those localized impact on snake populations by killing large numbers once a year. And, you're not going out and killing all these other animals by pouring gasoline into tortoise burrows, because all the animals are kept in captivity. And snakes that we have in captivity go to this event as well. And then before the event, all these snakes that have been kept in captivity get brought to the event and get put in those containers. And so it's essentially the exact same experience for the festival goers, but it has a much lower impact on the snake populations. I will say, and I can't really speak to this much, but the roundups in the Southwest are much different. Like, for example, in the Southeast, you would never see a snake die. They would all get killed after the fact for the skin trade. But in the Southwest, they're actually very grotesque events. This is probably what most people think of when they think of a roundup, where, they have kids come up and rip the guts out of a snake and throw it onto a white wall. And, so the Southwestern roundups are a whole different story, dealing with different species. There are many more of them. But we're primarily have been focused on these Southeastern roundups.
So I guess with the end user, the festival being the same on the east side, was there any pushback? I guess the people who are probably wanting to buy the snakes and sell the skins, I'm sure they had some pushback, or was it a relatively easy transition?
I mean, I think the skin dealer was probably not happy, but that was literally one individual who was getting all of those snakes every year. The biggest pushback probably came, well, not pushback, but the municipalities where it was held, there was obviously concern about the revenue. This festival's a big, it would be like if you had one of the big festivals in your part of Canada, in your hometown. It's important for the economy. And this was certainly true. But we dealt with that, and the festival's as strong as ever economically for the municipalities. There are also some individuals that are very interested in the heritage and the history of these, and have been very vocal pushing back against it. But in general, the transition of the Claxton Roundup to this wildlife festival, I think has been a very successful. It's been a great example of a win-win, and how again you can continue the economic benefits and lower the ecological impacts at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. It's just such a great way to shift the focus and have less gasoline dumped on the ground is always a good thing. So that's awesome. As we start to wrap up here, I was hoping to touch a little bit on the private sector, because this is something that obviously I focus on a lot, being a reptile keeper, and my podcast really tries to connect keepers with the concept that this is an ethical obligation that we have to fulfill, and make sure that not only are the animals being cared for well, but also what can we do to have a positive impact on not only the animals we have in our own collections, but also sort of on a broad scale. So whether that's through donations, through conservation, or some people have assurance colonies and whatnot, or just education in general. So I was wanted to know what your opinion on keeping as a private keeper in the private sector is. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, so first of all, I keep reptiles as well. So, it's not my primary thing. If I had to give up, say, going out and looking for them in the wild or keeping them, I would give up keeping them first. But, I've had reptiles in captivity, ever since college. And so these days it's primarily venomous snakes. I have a nice little collection of rattlesnakes that I enjoy, and I use them for outreach. So in general, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm supportive of it in a very general sense. I think it should be done. I guess ethically would be the word, and I don't know even exactly what that means. But as a conservation biologist, I would want to see any pet trade in any animal, but again, specifically here, snakes, not impact wild populations. I don't know if that means, that animal, there's certain species that should be captive bred, maybe other species it's fine to have a wild caught, but, based on the potential impacts, along those same lines, people not releasing animals into the wild, and then there's obvious, just like with any pet, making sure keeping the animals done ethically, they're, these animals are treated well and have the resources they need to survive in the space they need, those types of things. But so in general, I'm supportive of it. I think there's a lot of pluses. It really gives people a connection to these animals that are so great. And, a lot of people then take that animal and, use them as ambassadors, for conservation of animals in the wild, whether they take them to school groups like I do, or
what the hell is this?
I'm just showing them to friends. So I think it's a good thing. Again, there are certain things that I think come along with that, being ethical, again, not releasing animals, making sure you're sourcing your animals with a mind towards having little impact on wild populations, those types of things, treating the animals well, but otherwise I think it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. What are your, maybe you don't have any thoughts here, but I know you just did the episode, I think the most recent episode was with the Burmese python elimination specialist. And this is a very hot topic right now because of the Florida Wildlife, what is it, FWC? I think that's the acronym. They had just made some rules, or the government in Florida just changed some rules as far as reptile ownership goes. And part of that is banning big snakes and a few big lizards. And I actually don't have much of an issue with it. And some of the listeners may have a huge issue with it because a lot of them see it as a slippery slope that will slowly remove rights. And I don't personally feel that way because I live in a place that's much more highly regulated than a lot of the United States. And that hasn't happened to us. So I was just wondering, what are your thoughts there, or if you have any thoughts? Because clearly that the Burmese issue is a massive issue, especially after listening to that episode. You learned so much more about how bad it is. And do you have thoughts about regulating the trade at all?
Well, so the first thing I would say is that I don't understand it that well, to be quite honest with you. Orion Society does not do advocacy or like lobbying or litigation. We do science and real on the ground conservation things, say such as like habitat restoration. So from a work perspective, I have not put that much thought into the issue, but I do know that the pythons that are now in the wild are having just an absolute huge impact. And so how that should, and so I guess I would just, I can't answer that in an informed way. What I would say is, I think we need to do things that would prevent those types of things from happening in the future. Is that the government regulating what we can and can't have? I don't know, but I certainly want to see, a future where we don't see these types of, say, giant snake, populations, non-native snakes happening, say, in other parts of the country, other parts of Florida. But I don't know if those regulations would do. I don't need to be quite honest with you. I don't understand the proposed regulations that well. I mean, I hear them called like the python ban. I'm assuming there's certain species that people wouldn't be able to keep in captivity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just not really aware of the issue. But I will say that in general, I would always come out on the side of trying to protect native wildlife populations. I'm also would oftentimes lean against a lot of real government oversight on regulation with a variety of things. So, I mean, obviously, the government needs to regulate certain things, but so I can't answer that. But
yeah, it's not a simple, straightforward one, and I totally see the same point as having way too much government regulation. Really, a lot of times has the opposite effect, or people hiding these animals, and or sometimes it can cause people to release animals because they don't want to be caught with them. So it is a kind of a crazy concept, but or sort of a rat's nest of different things to unweave. But people should go listen to the episode you did with the Burmese python specialist, because I knew it was a problem, but that really sort of painted the full picture of how much damage those snakes are doing, and how primed they are to just become a powerhouse invasive species in that environment. It's pretty bizarre. So as we wrap up here,
one thing others.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say one other thing about that real quick. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
My take also on the Burmese python situation, and Donna, Khalil, the podcast you're referencing, episode we just released, it would not surprise me if this Burmese explosion that we're having in South Florida really came from only a small handful of snakes. As you know, they just have huge, high reproductive rates. I don't think it necessarily has to be that 100 snakes were released. It could be something like, 5 or 6 snakes were somehow in the wild, and those reproduced, and then there were 200 snakes, and then those reproduced, and then pretty quickly you get to the tens of thousands that we probably are experiencing now. So.
Well, and that was the really interesting sort of nail in the coffin fact that she dropped on that episode.
Quick comment on the Burmese retake, the python issue in the Everglades. It's actually kind of cool because we're starting to see animals that are actually like including those pythons in their diet. Like foxes and shit are learning to raid python nests. And then some of the larger animals are starting to view at least the juvenile ones. What the fuck, man? There's this upstairs neighbor just knocks on everything. I don't understand. Totally throws me off. I've completely lost my spot. What was I talking about? Hold on, it'll come back to me. Oh yeah. Larger predators are starting to include the juvenile to young adult pythons in their diet, so that's kind of cool. Just a positive note on invasive species.
episode is in the pet hobby, and I'm not super familiar with the whole Burmese issue because I'm in Canada and it's not something that I'm totally in touch with. But what we hear all the time, and I know you had said you heard it as well, is it's Hurricane Andrew that blew up a breeding facility, and that was the reason for it. And part of me thinks, well, that's still connected to the reptile trade, so I don't think we can necessarily completely offset responsibility if that was the case. But then what she had said is Hurricane Andrew was in 1992, and the first Burmese python, neonate Burmese python, found in the wild was in, I think, 1978. So like you said, if we're starting with a small amount of them in the 70s, it's easy to understand how 50 years later you can have a population explosion, and Hurricane Andrew may have added to it, but it certainly wasn't the initial reason for them getting out there.
Yeah. And my point is, I mean, however they got there, they certainly were associated with the pet trade. They were somebody's pet, but yeah, I don't think it was that this breeding facility was destroyed, as you mentioned. But my other point there is that it could take a really small number of animals, and so the point being, I don't know if regulating something at such a high level would have an impact. Again, right. I'm not sure. I don't feel informed enough to speak on it, but.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's one of the things with Florida is it's just a breeding ground for anything. I mean, it's not like Burmese are their only issue there. They have a bunch of invasive species, and you just have that climate that almost anything on the planet can thrive in. So it adds a little layer of complication for them that most people, I mean, especially here in Canada where it gets to minus 40 degrees Celsius, we pretty much don't have any issues as far as invasive species goes. So in the spirit of your podcast, you always wrap up with a question that I'm going to ask you because, as a host of a podcast, you end up, interviewing people, and then people don't necessarily learn about the host as much as we might like. So you always ask the question to your guests to tell them your best snake story. So I'm going to ask the same question to you. What is your best snake story?
Okay. I'm going to say what everybody says to me. I have so many of them.
Yeah.
But I do have so many of them. But I think I will take you guys back to Idaho when I was doing my PhD. And this was just a little southwest of Yellowstone National Park. And I was doing a long-term monitoring project with Great Basin rattlesnakes, and then I was studying their ecology and the impacts of an invasive grass on their prey. And so for part of our season, what we'd do is we'd go out and we would catch snakes when they were coming in and out of the hibernacula, and we would bring them to the university and we'd process them. We'd measure them, we'd weigh them, we'd mark them, we'd sex them, on and on. I mean, over a course of 5 or 6 years in Idaho, with no exaggeration, I handled thousands of Great Basin rattlesnakes.
Wow.
And so I'm going to tell you about one particular day. The way we'd catch them is we'd go out to these features, and I don't mind talking about them because this place, you can't go there. It's a heavy security nuclear facility. And so we'd go out to these really large, like, craters and things like that where the snakes were hanging out. And we'd go out, we'd look for snakes, and we'd carry 5-gallon buckets and snake bags inside the buckets. And then we'd put usually, like, say 3 or 4 rattlesnakes to a bag. And, you'd put one in, and then we'd kind of like get the outside of the bag to kind of cover that snake so that snake wouldn't bite the next one you put in, and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that all these practices are good necessarily. 20 years ago, and maybe some of this should change, but this is what we were doing anyways. So we go out to the first site, which is a large volcanic crater out in this high desert. And we start going around, and I can't remember the exact number, but we get around this crater, and we have captured over 50 Great Basin rattlesnakes. And it's getting to the point where I'm starting to worry about the number of snake bags that we have. And we have, just what seemingly an endless number of them. So then we move on to the next big crater, and we end up continuing to just catch incredible amounts of snakes. I remember walking up to one of the den openings. It was kind of like a hole in the volcanic rock. As I walked up to it, I saw snakes literally piled in that hole, like 6 or 7. And then I started looking around. There were snakes all around it, snakes perched on rocks around it. I was literally grabbing a snake with my tongs, passing it to somebody who also had tongs. We had this like conveyor belt. We were just trying to catch these snakes as quickly as possible. And by the end of the day, we had caught 124 Great Basin rattlesnakes.
Wow.
And we had 3 primary sites, and we ran out of bags at the first 2 sites. So we still had daylight, and we just couldn't hold any more snakes. I bet we could have gone and caught another 40, and so that's my all-time record in terms of catching rattlesnakes in a day, 124. And I'll never forget that day. And then I'll just tell one very short story that's kind of funny, that would not be linked necessarily to processing these animals, but we would process the animals at the university, and it'd be a group of us, and we each kind of have a role. And it was in this very kind of standard university room, no, just cinder block walls, no windows. It was a snake room, so it was set up so snakes couldn't escape, and we had a lot of control over temperature and humidity and those types of things. And so there was a pretty complex apparatus on the wall that controlled all of that. And so myself and 3 other people who worked with me were in there, and I was standing up, and I would, we'd have those buckets, and they'd be in big cattle bins behind me, and I'd dump one bag out into this cattle bin, and I'd take one snake and I'd put it into a scale, and I would get the weight, and then I would tube it, and then I would take it out, and I would measure it, and then I would pass it to somebody, and they would paint the rattle, and then they'd pass it to somebody, and they'd do something else. So we had this conveyor belt of 4 people, and so we have snakes everywhere. I've got a cattle basin a couple feet behind me full of snakes. I've got a snake in my hand. Person to my left, just like 2 feet from me, has a snake in their hand. People across the lab bench, 2 people have snakes in their hands. There's just rattling everywhere. And my wife comes in with my daughter, who at the time couldn't even walk. She was less than 1. And she's now a teenager. But anyways, so, and they come in just to say hi. And I remember my daughter puts her hand on that apparatus that controls everything, the lighting, the temperature, the humidity, and instantaneously the room goes dark.
Oh no.
And there is no light. There's no space under the door because this room is a snake room. It goes as dark can get. And we're all just standing here like right around each other with rattlesnakes all around us, rattlesnakes in our hands. It was an interesting moment, but yeah, good times. I miss Great Basin rattlesnakes for sure.
I'm not sure I would classify that as a funny story, but but that is amazing.
It was funny at the time.
So how did you get the lights back on?
I can't remember, to be quite honest with you. I think I came over. Yes. I might have opened the door. I might have go over and open the door, but yes, that was funny.
Oh, I have a friend who lives in South Africa, and they always deal with load shedding events, so the power will go out, and he has a venomous collection as well. So he has special lights that are running on batteries and whatnot, just in case that happens. That's the last thing you need, is to be pitch black holding a venomous snake, and now you know what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I really enjoyed this, and I am obsessed with your podcast, and I know many of the listeners will go over to your site and check out the show because it is fantastic, and I'm learning so much from it. So can you let everybody know where they can find more info about yourself, as well as the Orient Society, and where they can listen to the podcast?
So first of all, for the Orient Society, and really for the podcast, I would go to our website, which is www.orianne.com. And so it's the Oriental Society website. You can find the Snake Talk podcast on there. You can also find it on anywhere else that you find podcasts, so that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, any of these. And so yeah, I'd encourage you to get on and give it a listen. I'm having a good time with it. Feel free, if you like it, make sure you you give us a 5-star review and make a comment. And I definitely listen to the comments. As example, I had a woman, a keeper at the Bronx Zoo, comment that she didn't think we had enough women as guests, and I had never thought about it. I was just kind of interviewing based on topics, independent of whatever factor. But I put some thought to it, and we ended up bringing in more women. But
okay, so anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up here because holy 4-hour stream. Oh my goodness. If anybody watches the VOD, makes it this far, thank you. Again, shout out to, where is it? I have a list. I had a list. Oh, okay, here we go. Shout out to most likely Marsh and Amera Gaming for the follow. I appreciate it. And of course, Marzi Plant for probably sending people my way. Thanks for that shout out. So we're gonna end it here. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Bye bye.